So, Wilkinson, when we got here for the LCQ,
Yeah.
first night you were here,
Yeah.
rare moment. You decided to go to sleep early. I thought you were turning over a new leaf.
Yeah.
I thought that, you were in your married man arc and things were calming down.
I mean, to be clear, Beth isn't here.
well, yeah, but still, the lifestyle. I thought
Right.
you were entering a new era.
Yep.
And I was taken aback,
Right.
frankly. And then the job was done. LCQ, at least for the first 4 days, we're recording this like between the 2 weekends.
Yeah.
Came to an end. And last night, I went to the hotel a little early.
Yeah.
What happened to you? what happened?
Van Silly happened to me. He's like, oh, I might not see you until next year. I mean, I bet I see him at some point in the off season. But he was guilt tripping me into going out and then to another dive bar, and then he's buying shots at the bar, and we're playing shuffleboard, etc., etc. Like I don't like, by the way, that you've begun this by reinforcing my trope as being an alcoholic. Like that seems to just be my chat. Like, oh, you always have a drink in your hand. I'm like, no, I don't. I don't go out to a bar on my own. Like I'm not I'm socializing with friends, and they happen to be picking alcohol establishments. I'm not the one going, hey guys, let's all guzzle some pints down tonight.
No, that is true. You are susceptible mentally to the temptations.
Yeah, every temptation. I mean, drink is not the only one. I'm susceptible to anything.
How long did you have a long night there?
I can't really recall. I think it was like 1 or 2 or something. Doug dragged me away eventually.
There it is. Good guy.
Yes.
Great guy, that Douglas, reining you in. I wanted to take a little trip, dust off the tomes, right?
Okay.
And go back and kind of start in the past.
Yep.
Which is when we met, like all the way back. I think it's been almost 9 years now that I've known you.
Is it really?
Yeah, we met because it was back in TF2 for the people that weren't involved in that. Every year there was the international LAN, the one a year at the Insomnia series in the UK, because there were just so many UK-based players that had always happened there, and there was no big NA LAN. And it was I-55, which was in 2015 in the summer.
Was that really 2015?
Yeah, it was in 2015.
Yeah, that makes sense, actually.
And I think that was just after I think you had stopped competing, or maybe we're playing it just kind of for fun. But you were definitely doing commentary at the event.
Yeah, that one was the first event that I'd done full-time commentary instead of playing. The one before that at I-52, I was doing... I think I only did a couple games of commentary, but I was there with a team that was... the one before I met you, we were there. It was like an enormous event. 2 of the North American teams had been flown over, which you weren't a part of at the time.
Right.
And then one of the Australian teams had crowdfunded themselves to be flown over as well.
Right. Was it like Immunity?
Yes. Yeah. A massive event. And they needed to fill 8 teams out. So there's those 3 international teams. Then there's like the 2 top European teams, then more European teams. And then they're like, well, I guess the 8th best team is like Sideshow's team. I just got hammered for every match.
I mean, that was always also, I mean, you feeding into the narrative on your own, by the way. But that was
my whole team did. It wasn't just me playing drunk, but the whole team atmosphere was like, hey, we're here to have fun. We're not here to win. Like, we're just gonna get drunk at 10 a.m. and ruin other people's competition.
I mean, that was the Insomnia series special. Though.
It was.
That was the closest we got to legitimate competition, and the open bar had everybody in a chokehold at those events. Like, but that was. Can
you imagine if that happened for like LCQ? Like MIBR just turns up and they've just hammered. They're just like, whatever. Let's just do whatever we want.
Do we ever?
I mean, they're getting paid. It's slightly different. There was a level of professionalism required. And there's a level of like unprofessionalism that was almost required for TF2.
Speaking of the unprofessionalism, was I-55 the one where you had to pick up costs and drive in your Morris Minor to the event?
Yeah, I
think
think
so.
so.
And the brakes went out?
Yeah, the brakes went out while I was going 70 miles an hour on the highway. Yeah. And I've got a guy that, I mean, I played with a long time. I knew him, but I'd never met him before. And the first thing that happened was I turned up to his house, got him into my 1964 rickety classic car, and realized that the brakes had failed and almost slaughtered him and myself in a vehicle.
How did you come to a stop? What was... how did you save yourself?
Well... I'm kind
of cost. He's such like a soft-spoken, sweet lad.
He was shitting his pants. Yes, he was pissing and shitting. I mean, I should have used the handbrake, but I forgot that handbrakes exist. So instead, I just I cycled down the gears a lot because that helps slow the car down massively in the old classic ones, especially. And then, unfortunately, I was carrying so much speed from the highway that I couldn't really do that very effectively. So I just took the first off-ramp that I could, and there was like a queue of cars to get onto a roundabout that led off somewhere else. So I had to zoom past the queue and just kind of whoops, slide in front of everybody, cutting people off because I couldn't stop. And then I just eventually kind of rumbled to a halt in Stoke-on-Trent.
I mean, wasn't that as well? That event was in Coventry.
Yeah, I think so. Oh, yeah, was it? Or Birmingham? I can't remember.
I think it was in Coventry. And I remember you saying you drove as well 200 miles or something. It was a mega drive you took.
Probably, yeah, because I went via Liverpool to pick up Kos.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, but that's what I would, I was regularly doing that anyway, because that's kind of what and I live fairly far north compared to everybody else that was playing at the time in TF2. I lived the furthest away from all of these events up north. So I would kind of come down the country, picking up people on the way, like an avalanche of shittery that just ended up with, we would turn up to the event. I mean, in that event, I turned up with the Morris Minor strapped to the back of a tow truck.
Right.
Me and Kos rode in the front of the tow truck.
Were you able to drive it back?
I had to drive it to... God, I had to drive it to it was in Coventry now, I remember actually. Yeah, I had to drive it to a garage to get the brakes fixed. They said it was going to take a week. The event ended in 3 days. So I was camping in the tent that ended up getting flooded because that was just the classic thing to do at those lands. So I ended up going back to a friend's house who lived in Coventry, somebody who worked in the area and played on a lower level team. And weirdly, Miralyn also missed his flight. So me and Miralyn ended up going back and staying at this guy's house. And he was eating raw bacon out the fridge and stuff.
I mean, that is some demonic gamer activity.
Yeah.
That is.
But yeah, I also met you.
Yeah. No, I remember because I have a distinct memory of, it was on the day we got eliminated. We came in 4th place. And I was just calling my ass off in that event because I remember I switched from roamer to pocket because our calling was bad, and that was the best tournament I ever played. And we had gotten eliminated because at some point I remember we were playing against Mike's team. I can't remember what they were called at the time.
But I can't remember. Reason? Mike and Cadis?
It was Reason,
right?
Mike and Cadis. And I think we lost 2-1, 2-1. And at some point I was just so fatigued. And then after that, I remember at the end of the day, we met just liquored up. I mean, as you do at those events. And I just remember we were going off to each other.
Yeah.
Actually the ranting emotes to each other at that point.
Yeah.
We were going nuts because we were both just so passionate about the game. I feel like at that time, we kind of mirrored each other. You were the EU me and I was the NAU because we were both so invested in trying to grow the game and working on the broadcast and sharpening the viewer experience.
A helpless task.
Absolutely. But we were... It bore zero fruits, but we were so invested and we were just going off for God knows how long. Yeah. And I remember Turbo Tabs just standing there, who's just an absolute unit, by the way, now. And I remember saying that to you. I saw another photo of him the other day. That dude is an absolute beast now, which is so funny. But I remember him just stood there. And eventually, I mean, at some point, I think we started, the fatigue set in. And he just said, I just wanted to say hi, but you were just wrapped up in a whirlwind. And he was just waiting there for so long. But and at the same time too, it was because we both played roaming soldier.
Yeah.
There was just like some kind of parallel that
you were better than I was.
Clicked. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's not the important part. But yeah, and then it's just funny because then all this time later, in some way though, different paths were taken as I stepped away from esports for a while, and you had stuck with it. Now,
I mean, also you were more inclined to do the business side of stuff, whereas I was more inclined to do the like on camera. I mean, you know, you're doing on camera stuff as well, but you were involved a lot more behind the scenes in the like business side of things, whereas I was primarily focused on the production and content creation and that kind of thing.
Yes.
In the following years after 2015.
Yeah, that is true as well. For some, I associate that time in my life so much more with what I was doing outside of gaming, as it was also taking up so much of my time. Like I would work 9 to 5 at my marketing job, and then as soon as that was over, it was ascent until I fell asleep.
Yeah,
basically, I was doing that every day for it was like 2.5 years or so. But I just spent so much time at that soul-sucking job trying to make an esports team work with no investment. So it was. I mean, it was a passion project for sure. But it is cool then that we have reunited after all of that time, like spent away. Where we still loosely saw each other. Like I remember you would turn up to the rewind lands when you were working Owl and that.
And those were always incredibly funny. That and Tip of the Hats.
Yeah,
where just getting your stories on what was happening still like behind the scenes in the TF2 scene while I had like started moving on to Overwatch was very funny. I've definitely moved forwards from like utter degeneracy to an Overwatch League scene that was like, oh, things are starting to become more professional, to now Valorant where things are fairly like, you know, tight knit, like the players know what they're doing. They don't, if they do get up to shit, they like hide it, or they know what to do to not make it appear that bad. But I mean, sometimes you take a peek back down memory lane or like peer into what's still going on in those other scenes. And you're like, oh my Lord, what's happening there?
Shut the door. Shut the door on that one.
Yeah.
Moving forward, when Valorant started, I mean, that's when we really started to work together.
Yeah.
Again, was in Valorant in that LA house when the Valorant podcast started. But for you, how tough was it at that point to begin moving away from Owl and beginning Valorant? Or was that just kind of the decision you've been pondering?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to be candid, like 2018 when Overwatch began, there was, well, when Overwatch League was first announced, which I believe was in like November 2016, already there was an enormous segment of the esports community that was like, this is not an esports ready game. This is going to fail. Like, this is a shit idea. And I liked the game, and I was hoping that it could provide like a catapult for me out of TF2 doing things for free land into maybe doing things for a bit of money land. And I was like, okay, this seems like a good opportunity. Yeah, it doesn't seem like the best esports ready game in the world, but it's got a developer behind it that looks like it's going to do something, yada, yada. Like 2 years later when Overwatch League actually launched, by that point, there's still a lot of shaky ground. And it's not like everybody involved was fully bought into the idea that like this was going to be a 20-year dynasty of Overwatch League taking over the top spot from League of Legends or whatever. So even in 2018, people are like, how long is this going to last for? Like, is this something that you want to commit your entire career to, et cetera, et cetera? But no one really knows at that point. It's just how bought in you want to be. You know, do you want to commit to it for 5 years? Do you think it's going to last 10 years? Are you constantly looking for a way to just improve your resume and get out? And so definitely towards like when Valorant was being released, I've always been into Counter-Strike as a casual fan. And also, like you were saying earlier with the TF2 stuff, one of the things that I was really exploring at the time was like what makes a good format for viewership, for games, that kind of thing, because we would have those conversations constantly in Team Fortress, because it was a game where we as the community had the choice of what game modes we wanted to play and how to enforce the rule set and that kind of thing. And so we wanted to maximize it for the best possible format. So in order to research that, you have to look at like, oh, what are the best esports formats? Like which games really work? And CS is just so beautiful. The format creates tension, and yet it has low points, and the rounds have knock-on effects, but each one is kind of self-contained. It's an excellent format. So when they said that Valorant was being released and it's like an Overwatchy game, well, not Overwatchy at all, but like some ability level stuff, but with the CS skeleton around it of how the structure works and the shooting, that was a massive like light bulb for me, because also trying to get into Counter-Strike, like if I was looking to pivot away from Overwatch and go into CS, which some of the people were trying to do towards the end of Overwatch. Like, we were working with Semler, right? And he's a big Counter-Strike guy. And he was like, hey, like there might be some opportunities for people to do some smaller events. Like if you wanted to do that kind of thing, maybe there'd be opportunities there. But it never made sense to me because there's such an insane history in Counter-Strike. Like trying to step in there, you just feel like an imposter or a fraud if you haven't been baked into the scene from the very beginning. The amount of research you'd have to do to get down on everybody's like backstory and have their play styles, where they've gone, what they've been doing, what they've achieved. It's just a mountain. Whereas Valorant, you're starting at the beginning. Like, yeah, you have to know roughly like what these guys have done in the past, but who gives a shit about like, I'm not talking about Ethan's CS career in detail when he's in the finals of Tokyo. I'm just talking about like he has experience on the big stage. This is what he's done in Valorant. So it wasn't a difficult transition at all. It was extremely exciting.
Were you concerned at all switching over that you would have to, kind of shed a lot of those Overwatch viewers that you had, and concern with, I suppose, regrowing a substantial amount of that audience or going beyond it? Or did you just feel like the game would succeed so much that you'd get there eventually? Because you were doing really well in Overwatch, not just working for the actual league, but the content on your own.
Yeah, the content on my own was doing fairly well, but it wasn't doing incredibly. It's not like I had to leave behind. So at the time, I think on Twitter or whatever, I got like 40K followers. It's not enormous. I mean, I'm working with people that have hundreds of thousands of old Twitter followers that from Counter-Strike or League of Legends that don't give a shit about what they're tweeting about Overwatch. So yeah, if I transition that forward, like it's not going to be great. On YouTube, really quite a small YouTube following, even for Overwatch stuff. I mean, I think still most of my YouTube subscribers are probably from TF2. Like actually, they've just forgotten to unsubscribe. And then the streaming stuff that I did, didn't do very well at the beginning, and that was a bit of a concern for me. But also, I'd been doing a lot of variety stuff, and people weren't tuning in to watch me play because I was good ever. Like even when I was streaming TF2 when I was a semi-pro,
which is rare,
people were never tuning in to watch me play because I was good.
I don't think there's anyone else who has done that. Genuinely, at least that I know of in FPS games.
Gone from being like a top level player to being known for being bad.
Yeah, and the draw is
right.
People are waiting for you to just mess up in tremendous fashion.
Right,
I am unaware of anyone else who has made that their brand. I mean, I suppose unintentionally.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I'm sure there's some larger streamers that have that as their shtick too, that they're terrible. I mean, no, actually, I don't watch enough of the streamers that play other games to really know whether that's like a draw. But yeah, usually people are like trying to create content that makes them look good.
Right. I mean,
I do the opposite, and it's much easier, by the way. If you're looking for a cheat code, like it's way easier to play badly.
Because I mean, listen, when I had quit that marketing job and stopped doing Ascent because it was just financially untenable and moved to Los Angeles into that chaos house with Bren and everybody.
Yeah.
I was just making ends meet by editing the videos for you and running Jake's YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And I genuinely had so much fun making your videos because I would just be crying in the room going through the clips. They were all just, it was just a gold mine.
It's
of
incredible.
funny.
I love my YouTube channel. No one else does. Like, I mean that in the sense of it doesn't get viewership. It's just a mishmash of random shit with I don't ever make a thumbnail. The titles are all just whatever nonsense I've come up with at the time. But to me, it's like treasured memories. It's just collections of the stupidest stuff that I've done, stretching all the way back to when I was doing like TF2 stuff or like Metal Gear Solid at the very beginning. Like the first game I ever streamed on Twitch, Metal Gear Solid 2, because Butt Nose, a guy that I used to play with, told me to do it because he thought it would be funny. And at the time, by the way, I had such bad internet, and I used to play on this internet and stream on this internet too, that I could only stream in 360 kilobit per second, not 360p. Like, when you stream usually on Twitch, you're going to be at 6,000 kilobit per second. I was streaming at 360 kilobit per second. My face was just a fuzz. Like, you couldn't tell that it was even me. So, yeah, but for the YouTube channel, I really just love doing that stuff. It's just funny.
Is a mixed bag treasure trove. From the Morris Minor vlogs to the story times to that stretch of me making the Overwatch compilations to just God knows what. But you can just go back and
I've got a guy editing the Pokemon videos now as well. So like, and those are like 30 minutes, 40 minutes long. And then I have other videos that are like 2 minutes long. The algorithm hates me. It doesn't know what to do with me. And I should have made like 3 different YouTube channels and tried to take it seriously and done thumbnails and titles and stuff. And no.
Jumping a bit back to Valorant though, and you were talking about CS:GO and kind of the talent a bit there, and the difficulties of jumping in there. And one of the things that's constantly brought up about the CS:GO talent is how much they're revered in this space. Moving into Valorant, did you feel like that might be an opportunity to be an attack FPS and sort of elevate that for yourself as well, just the respect that you could have in the scene? Because it seems like it's just so much more prominent for at least at the time CS than it was for OWL or other games in FPS.
Yeah, I think I definitely didn't go into it thinking this is my opportunity to be a revered commentator. But I think one of the reasons that the Counter-Strike commentators are so appreciated is because the format is excellent to allow them to do their thing. It's the fights that happen are clear, simple, and allow for excellence in storytelling. Contrast that to Overwatch or League of Legends, where a team fight happens, or Dota or something, and it's like all the things are happening all at once, and it's the cast's job to try and like parse out what's happening and make something legible to the viewer. The game is already legible in TAC FPSs usually, and so your job is less to try and make things palatable and more to add like extra gorgeous elements on top. And I think the Counter-Strike casters have been phenomenal at that over the years, where they've taken moments that even on their own are obvious to the viewer that they're fantastic, and just elevated them to the next level with their commentary, which is difficult to do. I can't particularly think of many moments in Overwatch, as an example, that are like that. There's like one, I don't know if you're familiar with it. I can't even remember who it was. I think it was Defran even, where he Zarya jumps over the roof in in Hollywood, and then grabs, and it's got Monty and Doas casting over the top of it, and Monty says, "What a play, what a grab." And like that's a moment where it's so obvious what a cool play that is if you're familiar at all with the game. Like there's another one where they jump through the window of Eichenwald in the World Cup. I think that was Zunba that did that. There are certain small moments where you can add extra stuff on top, but most of the time what you're doing is just trying to make things like understandable, which isn't the same task. And I don't feel like I'm yeah, in Valorant, you have to do a lot of making things understandable too, because there's a lot of, well, actually, I don't think you have to. There's different styles, but the style that I really like, from not from a product perspective, but from like I find satisfaction doing this, is to try and guide the viewers through what I'm appreciating about the game. So that does end up being more of like a explanatory rather than appreciative, or like, you know, adding the extra elegant stuff on top. I think Valorant commentary has a very different style to it than Counter-Strike from the color side of things. I think the play-by-play can be fairly similar, but we've gone in a very different direction with the color, I think.
Yeah, that's something that I know Bren has sort of publicly discussed a lot, the similarities and differences there, and it was Sean who had made a point in response to that I thought was pretty accurate, which is one of the key differences between the games is that there's the barrier at the beginning of the round, and there's so much setup you have to do based around that, because you can immediately see what a team is generally speaking going to go for. You have to keep track of what abilities they're able to purchase, and you have to keep track of what ultimates could be in play or could potentially be in play, depending on if a team could get an orb, if they're one orb away. And that there's so much to keep track of in regard to that, and the game being MR13. Do you feel that there's just, it's sort of maybe a middle ground between Overwatch and CSGO? There's more opportunity for storytelling than Overwatch, but less so than CSGO?
I really don't see almost any comparison with Overwatch casting anymore. Like the stuff that I had to do in Overwatch, I almost like rebuilt from the ground up to do Valorant. But I don't think that I've gone, like, I didn't really mirror what was happening in the Counter-Strike stuff either. If anything, I took an approach that's more to do with the like VOD review, weirdly enough. Like if people are VOD reviewing and they're explaining, like, if you were doing a breakdown of like, you know, this piece of utility goes here and this creates space here and this is going to counter this, like more of a, like, that to me is most similar to what I'm doing when I'm doing color commentary, because I feel like at some point the viewer base probably is going to be able to recognize the stuff that just intuitively, like, okay, there's people push bind, for an example, right? You see like 3 players on defense right next to the short barrier at the start of the round. You know there's some kind of play being made. You know, you see a showstopper or something. You know they're going to like double blast back down there, go for some kind of like, you know, market play where they showstopper in. At some point, maybe that won't be necessary to like call that out at the start of the round, because the viewers will just like understand intuitively like that's going to occur. But I don't think we're there yet at all. So I think it's your job to draw attention to that as quickly as you can, so that you frame what they should be looking at, what they should be paying attention to, and so that they can build attention for it. Because if you don't do the setup of like, you need to expect this to happen, then the barriers drop and there's immediately action. There's no tension. There was no anticipation for the moment. It was just, you got into the game and instantly there was something happening that might define the round within the first 5 seconds. There's no play of emotion there. It's just all happened.
Right. I mean, also, speaking as to your knowledge in the game and how much time you've put into research, VOD reviewing, what was mental to me were the first couple years, because you were still commentating OWL. That was when COVID had started and you were commentating from home. I remember Bren was in the garage in Austin.
Yeah.
And did you come over for that as well? You guys were in the 100-degree summer garage
sometimes, but they also, weirdly enough, even though we were living next to each other and there weren't COVID restrictions at the time on that kind of stuff, they had built the boxes for 2 separate casters that didn't live together, so they couldn't technically put us in the same room until the very end of the Overwatch season, which is mind-boggling, but that's just how it worked.
Wildly unnecessary.
Yeah.
But during that era, I remember when I was in the LA just nightmare house. We were on there were some demonic nights we were engaging in. I mean, I remember we would be VOD reviewing just some absolutely irrelevant games at 3 a.m. Renegades versus Time In, 3-map OT, lower bracket, round 1 ass games. I mean, watching absolutely everything. How were you managing that?
To be honest, by not putting as much effort into being excellent at Overwatch. Because, like, in theory, if I was really committed to being the best caster at Overwatch, they have a replay client. Like, I could have been spending all of that time going through the replay client, learning about, like, every small thing in the game. But I was fairly content at that point to work out a balance where I was just watching all of the games in Overwatch, not going in depth and, like, going through every detail of, like, how did this happen? How are they using their ults? Like, I wasn't doing VOD review of the Overwatch games. I was just watching the games because I had already done it for, like, I mean, I started in, like, 2016 or something. So what was that? 4 years. I'd done it for 4 years. I know roughly what I'm doing. I know the teams. I know the players. So I didn't feel like I needed to put in as much effort there. So instead, that actually didn't take up very much time. Like, if all you do as a commentator is watch the matches, turn up, commentate the matches, you got the easiest job in the world. Like, you're really not putting very much time in at all. But if instead you're doing all of the prep work, all of the, like, specific VOD review, trying to, you know, dig into stats or details or whatever, then it becomes a literally infinite job. Like, you could go as detailed as you possibly want to and take all the time in your life. And at that point, I mean, I'm locked in a house. It's 2020. What the hell else am I going to do? Like, I just moved in with Beth, right? Who's my wife now. But I just moved in, and we'd been, like, you know, living together for a weekend at a time or something, maybe a week at a time before that. But we both had our own separate places. And the idea in 2020 was that I was going to be on the road for homestands, like, almost every other month. Like, I was going to be away for 2 weeks, back for a week, away for a week, back for a week. Like, constant on the road casting was the idea in 2020 for the Overwatch League. And when the pandemic hit and that all got scrapped, we're in a relationship where we're just, like, confined in the same place the whole time. And that was very different. And I didn't want to be, well, it's not like it was necessarily a conscious thing. We were very comfortable with each other, but also we're both super happy just being on our own, doing things in the same house. And so there was no friction there if I just spent 15 hours a day VOD reviewing.
Yeah, that was, you had the rare stuck in a house with your partner, and it actually was a positive thing.
It was great.
I mean,
I
know plenty of people whose relationships got ruined from COVID.
The apartment next door to us, screaming, shouting, things hitting the walls.
Oh, geez.
And meanwhile, we're here like, this is quite lovely. I quite like spending time with her, actually. And also, we weren't spending every moment together because, like I said, I was doing, like, during First Strike, genuinely, 15 hour, I was doing the Sliggy schedule like he is now. I mean, he's a maniac for doing that now. Because at the time, I had to do it because I didn't know the game. No one knew the game at the beginning. But if you did that level of VOD review, you might know the game better than the players know the game. Because they're playing all the time, right? But they're playing ranked. They're not looking at, like, what everybody's doing. They're not looking at all the lineups. They're not looking at all of the different comps and ideas and theories and strats. Like, if you put more time in, you could be the person that knows the game the best in the world.
That is very true. I remember some teams early on were really doing some horrific stuff. I mean, I remember really early on, this was a deep cut, but Sabrosa would play Phoenix and just ult, doing the same thing. Beginning of round, just choose a place to ult and run it down. And you posted something on Twitter about it.
I tweeted about that.
And he just responded like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. But in hindsight, he would look at that and also think, yeah, that is appalling gameplay.
I mean, they were using the Phoenix ult to get Wardell on the line with his op. Like, they were using the whole ult to get a deep line for their opper. And I was like, bro, that can't be the best play. There's no way that's the best play. I remember discussing it with you, but also, yeah, it's not like I tagged him in the tweet or anything, but just like these things float around in a small community at the beginning. And yeah, the players would get pissed off about that kind of stuff. I mean, yeah, I've talked to Sabrosa like years later because I made more videos about like his team because they were popular and had large problems with what they were doing. And so I was doing a lot of VOD review and like suggesting things that would help. And yeah, I don't think he's taken it personally years later.
Yeah, I mean,
but also there was a lot of other people that didn't have a clue what they were doing at the time. But of course they didn't, because it's a brand new game. Like that's the point. That when you don't know, and I had this same problem in Overwatch when I began. I had no clue what was happening. Like no clue. I'd gone from TF2 where I'd taken years to get good at the game. I mean, I started playing in 2010, I think, and started playing at the top level in 2013 or 14, something like that. So it took like 3 or 4 years for me to get good and have any idea what I was doing. And even then didn't really know what I was doing. So you can't, if you're trying to be somebody involved at the very beginning of a scene, you can't just allow yourself to naturally learn in the same way that you would as like, you know, I'm going to learn French by doing Duolingo twice a week and it'll take me 2 years to do it. Like, no, motherfucker, you got to learn it now. So you've got to like throw yourself in at the deep end and learn to swim.
Yeah. I think being thrown into the deep end is kind of your beginning of your professional career in VALORANT as a commentator. I mean, quickly at Reykjavik, you were doing a lot in 2022 Reykjavik. And then Copenhagen, you were in the finals already. You did the Sunday game at Copenhagen straight away. Did you feel at the time that you were prepared for it? How do you feel after it as well when the job was done?
Well, yeah, you say I was thrown into the deep end for commentary, but I'd also been itching to do stuff because remember that I was there like right at the beginning with VALORANT. Like as the game got into alpha, I was there doing it, playing it, like watching it, making videos, like right from the beginning. That's like April 2020. And I first got an opportunity to commentate the game, at least as far as I can remember, in when even was that? Was that
early 2022?
2022, like 2 years later. Like I've been doing the game and been in the game and like a somewhat known figure in the game for like 2 years before I got a chance to actually commentate it. So I didn't feel like I was being thrown in the deep end. At that point, I was like, you know, chomping at the bit, ready to go. I mean, we'd also done like the co-streams and stuff. I'd been getting press passes for some of the previous tournaments, and we were doing like interviews and stuff. The final, though, the actual commentary of it, I had a very set idea of how I wanted to approach the commentary. And I think a lot of the commentary at the time was very unrefined. Again, of course it was. It was kind of the beginning of the game. The VCT circuit had only really just kicked off. A lot of casting pairs were in flux before that and stuff. But I think I've got some very strict ideas on how I think VALORANT should be casted. And a lot of people, I don't think, had really approached it in that structured way, where they're like applying thought to what they're doing.
Yeah. What is that?
Well, there's a lot of small things, right? It's not like a one sentence, but for example, doing stuff like building tension before the barriers drop, right? That's something that a lot of people at the time and still now, and also, you know, not helped by production in certain situations where they're running replays right until the barrier drops. But for example, in an ideal world, you know, 5 to 10 seconds before the barriers drop, you need to be leaving room for either color or play-by-play, preferably color, I think, to add that anticipation, tension of what might be coming up. I mean, especially if there's some level of like fast play you think is going to happen, an outside crunch on fracture, some, you know, aggressive showstopper play at the beginning of the round, like an oppa that's on a line that's about to take contact or something. You need to build anticipation for those moments. I think also like the way in which people were discussing strategy a lot was just talking about the comp in a theoretical way of like, I like Omen here because he has a flash, instead of a, you know, this is what they're currently doing. Like they are using the paranoia to be able to take the early line on Haven at the start of the round. Like, that's giving them an advantage, but they don't have the pull on C. So if they go over to C, that's going to be a problem. You know, like the actual detail of this is what the players might be thinking, or the players might be going through to create a strategy. Like, for example, using the eco rounds to talk about storylines instead of just commentating the eco rounds like they're as high value as the others. The concept of not being very hype at the beginning of the match or the beginning of the pistol rounds, because you need that level to ramp up as it goes later throughout the match. Like, there's a lot of things that are almost protocols that I think you're supposed to go through as a Valorant caster that a lot of people at the time had not developed. And it's not like I stick to them 100% of the time. It's a work in progress. You're aiming for that. It doesn't mean that you're doing it constantly. But yeah, I was very, like, I wanted to get involved and had some desire to show people how I thought it was supposed to be done. Having said that, though, we had not done commentary in front of a live crowd almost ever. Me and Bren were working on the desk primarily during Overwatch League. We'd done commentary in the past for TF2, for Overwatch as well. We'd been a commentary duo, but they put us on the desk for 2018, 2019. We got off in 2020, and we did like 2 live events in front of an audience, like one in Dallas, one in Washington, and then COVID hit, and we did everything online. So when we came back in and we were doing the finals of Copenhagen, we're like, Jesus Christ, we haven't done this. Like, we actually just haven't done a big final with a crowd. We've done big finals online, and we've done big finals on the desk, like much bigger finals on the desk, but it just is so different, especially when they're pumping English to the audience, which, apart from Copenhagen, I don't think they've done again. Have they?
No.
They will do for this champs,
Los
though.
Angeles, yeah.
Yeah, so that makes such an enormous difference, because you can play to the crowd. The crowd is in theory reacting to what you're saying. It makes such a large difference, and that was a mega learning moment for us. You asked me, like, in hindsight, was I happy with it? No. That final, and actually the fucking, I mean, even worse than that, the lock-in final.
I did want to ask about that next, but
beefed
with Copenhagen though. Did you feel satisfied with it immediately after? Is the hindsight disappointment now because
while it's happening?
Oh, really?
Yes. I mean, in some sense, there's like when I'm doing commentary, there's like two parts of my brain. There's one that's like the in the moment saying the words, and the other's the are you talking about the right thing? Like, what are you going to talk about next? Like, are we on track with the storylines? When do I need to hand off to Bren? That kind of like brain. And that kind of brain is also like listening to the commentary the whole time and being like, what the fuck are we doing? Or like, some maps, it's nailing it. Some maps, it's off. Like, I remember the Copenhagen one. I think there was a couple of maps in the middle that I wasn't happy with. I haven't reviewed it in a long time. But I thought the intro was okay. We tried to do a bit of crowd work, and the crowd couldn't hear us very well. And we also didn't really understand what the balance was like, because it hadn't been very heavily audio tested beforehand. And so we weren't sure what the balance was like that was coming through on stream in terms of like, so for example, one of the key tools when you're working with the crowd is that when you're online, something cool happens. Whoa, wow, whoa, whoa. You are providing the excitement that the viewer is supposed to experience. It's like a laugh track in comedy, kind of, right? You're watching a sitcom. They have the laugh track to tell you when to laugh. And not just to tell you when to laugh, to like induce laughter out of the audience. And without going too deep into that metaphor, because obviously you can, some people hate that kind of thing. That's the purpose of it. The purpose of getting hype when you're online is that you are telling the viewers, like, this is exciting, what's happening right now. You're building that emotion in them. When there's a crowd there and the people at home can hear the live crowd popping off, you don't want to be shouting over the top. You don't want to be shouting the crowd down. Right? You want to just like shut up and let the crowd do your job for you, where they're excited, therefore the audience at home is excited, and they're all feeling that emotion together. But when you don't understand what the level is like that's being pushed out to the stream, you might go quiet, and you can hear with your own ears the crowd going nuts, but you don't know that the stream is hearing that, and it can lead to some awkward situations or uncomfortability of like, should I be talking right now? Because I don't really know whether the viewers are hearing this at home. Like, it sounds dope to me, but I don't really understand. Stuff like that. But also the winning moment, I know that Bren wasn't particularly happy with, because if you remember, it was on Breeze. Sugetsu gets 4 1-taps in a row, and he just ends the game. Like, he's in a 1v3, I think, or something like that.
It was something like that.
It's some ridiculous situation, and it's just over. And like that. And it just caught us so off guard that we realized in the future we need to be way prepared for that. Because we really hadn't built the anticipation for that final moment well enough for that to be like the big payoff, which I think Pansy and Doug are excellent at the moment. I think they're doing that really well. I'm trying to think. I think Seth is really good at that too, but I specifically recall Pansy and Doug being good in those moments.
You mentioned the lock-in final, which you found out super short notice, so you and Bren were doing that,
the morning of.
Oh, geez. Yeah. Because Pansy had gotten
Pansy got a COVID positive test, and we weren't sure whether they were going to have Bren cast with Hypoc or whether they were going to have me and Bren take over and do it. In an ideal world, like, Bren and Hypoc would be great, because you don't like take the final away from Hypoc when he thought that he was going to get this awesome moment and he'd been preparing for it. But I think probably they just made that decision because you don't really want to fuck with commentary pairs that much. It ends up being a worse product almost all the time. But yeah, we had been expecting to cast like a 30-minute show match that day. And we hadn't really, we were like,
it was like an influencer match or something.
Yeah, what was it? It was
something like, oh yeah, I remember that, like Pancata was playing and
Gecko or something. Because they had Ryan Kusar. Yeah, I think it was Gecko.
It was it might have been. But regardless.
Yeah, we thought we were just doing that. And then we leapt into a BO5 that we hadn't prepped for.
With the greatest comeback of all time.
Yeah, with an insane comeback where we're like, they're 11-3 up, the crowd is going nuts, and we're like, all of the lines at that point, if you go back and listen, are like, I remember something that was saying, there's only been 2 teams ever to beat Loud. It doesn't look like Fnatic are going to join that list, right? And then they come back from 11-3 and win the fucking thing, and the crowd is just dead. And that's weird too, because when you have a biased crowd like that, which they should be, I'm not using biased in like a bad word, bad term. They're fans of Loud. When they're excited, so easy when Loud are doing well. When Fnatic are doing well and the crowd is silent, then you have to pick yourself up massively to make up for the fact that the crowd is dead, or you have to play off the fact that they're gutted. So when you're going through like maps 2, 3, 4, let's say, in the series, anytime Fnatic does well, you as a commentator feed off the energy of the crowd too. So you find yourself getting caught up in the moments where Loud are doing really well and talking about them really enthusiastically. And when Fnatic do really well, you have to force yourself to add that excitement because it's not naturally coming from the room. So that was a struggle, and that was something that we talked about probably between like maps 2 and 3 or something like that. Me and Brent sat there and we were like, we've got to be more like cognizant of that. So yeah, that was an issue. But then when the comeback's happening, then it's probably better to use the fact that it's silent to like get it through to the viewers that this is fucking up. Like they're choking, and you can feel the like,
the air is apprehension sucked out of the room.
Yeah. And it made the winning moment bizarre too, because there's like no applause, cheering, anything
for the greatest comeback.
Yeah,
in the last map of the finals, one of the greatest games of all time that will probably be remembered forever, as long as the game is. Until the game dies. God knows when that'll be, but it'll always. So then there's so many challenges with that aspect of it, and the fact that we were unprepared. And also the winning moment there too was. One of the Loud players, can't exactly remember who, being left in, was it Aspas? He was left in like a 1v4, 1v5.
Left in an impossible 1v4 situation where you know that Fnatic have won, but they haven't literally won yet. And that was another situation that I hadn't experienced before. And again, in hindsight, like I know how to deal with it now. but didn't deal with it very well at the time and was left feeling extremely unsatisfied with, feeling like I'd butchered the greatest comeback of all time.
Is that one of those things? Do things like that just bother you eternally?
Not eternally. I mean, I'm not actively bothered by it now because I feel like if I, did it again, I'd be fine with it. But it bothered me for a while, yeah.
Right. Also with that, there was a lot of criticism levied towards that cast. When and if you kind of experienced that criticism or thought about it, did you just feel like, yeah, sure, kind of warranted, but also a bit unfair?
Yeah, I mean, I don't go hunting for criticism.
Sure.
From people.
I think that was just one of the times where it actually, because there's always going to, no matter what, if you take 9 people, it's just 3 people are going to dislike a thing, a thing, and then there's going to be 3 people who are like, it's fine, or whatever. But that was one of the times where it actually kind of,
where it made sense,
where it it got traction.
Oh yeah, for sure. But but I think, partly that's because the viewership was enormous. It was I think, was it the most viewed game?
It might have been, yeah.
I think it probably was.
There,
yeah. So, if it's got 1.4 million concurrent viewers, it's going to have people that have no idea who the commentary duo are, right? And so if someone's very familiar with the fact that me and Bren have casted a lot and are competent, then if you slip up, it's like, oh, that's a rare slip up. If you are unfamiliar and you only tune in for the end and we're 5 hours in, overheating because there's no AC in the area.
Yeah, I heard about
losing
that
our fucking minds.
They just finally let at some point the people on the desk gee, we just wear shorts, it's fine.
Yeah, they had no AC in the entire stadium. Anyway, the point being that if you're not familiar with us, you're less inclined to give us any slack for when we do slip up, and I think that was part of it. But yeah, if there's criticism and it's accurate, then it doesn't leave me with a feeling of why the fuck are you saying that? I don't get offended by people criticizing it when I know that I've done something wrong. You just have to reflect on it and think, did I fuck that up? Yeah, a bit. Okay, I'll fix it for next time.
Did you ever feel like that maybe earlier in your career at different points, or have you always just been pretty open to that?
I don't like conflict particularly. I'm not a person that gets, I don't enjoy what?
Lord almighty, do I have a response to that. Karmine Corp? That was, there's never been more conflict. That was conflict you willingly engaged in and escalated.
I've gotten better at it.
Unbelievable level.
But I don't, okay, so maybe I should say that inherently in my personality, dislike conflict. I don't enjoy, human to human conflict interactions. I try to de-escalate whenever possible. But when you have a job where your job is to give opinions on how things function, then frequently you do run into conflict. Usually some online banter or whatever, or not banter, but argument. So during Overwatch, hated that. If I gave an opinion about something and somebody vocally disagreed and they were like, this guy doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about, I'd be like, dude, why can't people just be civil? And then it would bother me and I wouldn't know exactly how to respond. It's pretty difficult to de-escalate or come to a compromise in a situation where you're just tweeting at each other about how someone used an ult.
Yeah, I know. I remember I felt the same thing at the beginning of VALORANT, and at this point I just shed that.
But now I've found that there are very fun ways to engage with it without it being, without it really affecting me too much. I enjoy, or at least I can find enjoyment out of the conflict if I just think about it in a different way. If I think about it as content, because then it's not conflict about what I'm I don't know. I think I've just gotten more comfortable as well with being utterly wrong about things. Like a lot of what we do is going to be predictive.
We'll get into that too.
That is where most of the wrong comes from.
We'll get into that one.
So, like, if I have a take and I'm happy with the take because it came from a place of like knowledge or evidence or a read on the game, if I think the base premise of it was reasonable and it flowers nonsense, then I'm fine with it when it goes wrong. But then also if it goes right and people have just been rinsing me in my DMs, fida pute.
I mean,
then
for the context, if
the clap is back.
If someone is listening to who is not aware of the situation in the future or something, I mean, you had just simply predicted that a French team would lose a game or just not. I don't even think lose, just not perform well in a game.
No, I said it wasn't just that. I said that Karmine Corp had trolled, had picked up a terrible roster. It made no sense to have Scream IG yelling, and that they were trolling.
Right.
And I went on a rant about that on Plat Chat. I wasn't specific of like they're going to lose all their games or whatever. I just said that they've like fucked up with this roster that they've put together essentially. And that just did the rounds on like French Karmine Corp football fan Twitter, basically, with like this, I don't know, this dumb Englishman, like he thinks we're trolling. He's disrespecting the club, essentially, is like,
right.
Because they're super fans of the club, not really the players, the Karmine Corp fans.
And you got, is it fair to, did you get somewhere close to, maybe this is an exaggeration, like 1,000 DMs? Do you know where that might have landed? How many angry messages in French you received?
It was about 150 angry Twitter DMs.
Okay.
And then, my mentions had like, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. I mean, I couldn't even scroll through them all.
And also for context, this was after they beat a team in China and the game wasn't even out there yet.
This is also before and after they beat the team in China. Like they were exploding my DMs on the run up to the match, and then after the match they doubled down. Yeah, but I mean the thing about that though is that I also said that about Liquid. Like I hate the Liquid roster. I hated it, still kind of do, and they performed also awfully at lock-in. I mean, spectacularly poorly. Worse even than Karmine Corp.
That was the biggest beef up until this point in the game.
But also, Liquid fans didn't give a shit. And nobody got angry about the take that Liquid's roster didn't make sense. So it didn't go anywhere, right? It just kind of vanished into the ether. And it's not like I could revisit that take and be like, oh, Liquid, ended up winning EMEA. Haha, what a fool I am to think that this roster was bad. But I also, there's no reason to revisit it when there's no conflict there. So sometimes that is part of the content cycle, is that it's something that I think, something that I thought, but it didn't generate any level of like interest in other people. Therefore, it just withers away.
It is just hilarious that out of that criticism, you dropped a lost length saga of videos shredding their team, just putting the paper in the paper shredder of their team.
Yeah.
And then
I've never done that before.
I mean, it's just such a hilarious response. I know, I thought about it. If I put myself in that situation, I would have just been like, this is funny. And then just not thought about it again and moved on. But you just quadrupled down and went in. Where does that come from? Is that just the content brain, or is that just something else, the way you operate?
Well, that one specifically. So I've kind of done this before where, like in Overwatch, for example, like I'll have said something during a cast and gotten some like feedback like from the fans where they're like, well, this is such a like shit take. And so I've done a whole stream like going back into the VOD review of why they're wrong. Like, this is what you missed during the game. This is why I was criticizing this player. And so, but I genuinely think that it's important to provide evidence rather than just saying a team is bad. Like the more that I get into any aspect of anything I'm interested in, I want to get more and more and more specific. Like, I dislike vagaries. If you have feedback about something or an improvement you want to make, or like a politician's telling you they're going to fix something, like specifics. If you can't give me specifics, I'm going to ignore basically what you're saying. And maybe you have a general point and there's a specific that gives an example of it and you want to extrapolate outwards, I'm all right with that. But if you're talking just about vagaries, I'm not interested. And I feel like a lot of other people too will feel the same way. So in that situation, like I could have gone on to Plat Chat the next week and been like, guys, did you see like Karmine Corp were trolling? Like they were so shit. But I felt like going through and giving some evidence points was important. And then the content brain kicks in and is like, what if I got all the evidence points? Because there's comedy there when it gets more and more and more ridiculous. Like if the video is just 10 minutes long, it's just a video. Right. If the video is 20 minutes long and I have 20 tabs open, then it's like, my dude went in. If there's 4 parts to the video and I have 100 tabs open, then it's like, it becomes funny then. Not and good, like it was actual analysis. Like I was going through what I would, like if I was coaching them and they had that level of, I mean, first of all, wouldn't let that disaster of a roster exist. But if I was coaching a team, like doing VOD review, that would also be my approach, is to get specific, right? Like that is valuable feedback to improve upon. So that's like where my head goes for improvement.
Yeah, absolutely. That kind of reminded me of another thing too. Just speaking on Plat Chat, speaking on the broadcast, whatever it may be, it's just, and this feels so like corny and lame to say, but I truly do believe, excuse me, that the only way, and it was always my mentality from being on Plat Chat at the beginning, is you just have to say the thing. You just have to say it, and you just have to say it exactly how you mean it, authentically, your belief, no matter what it is. Yeah. As long as it's the thing you do truly believe, it'll always come across the right way. And I think that the viewers have a subconscious understanding of that, honestly. Even if they're not thinking about it presently, I think that it is something that people just pick up when you're giving your takes. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think of that, I tend to flip that on its head. Like what I dislike hearing from people who have like, you know, podcasts that are similar to the Plat Chat stuff is when they're talking about, oh, you know, this roster could do pretty well. Like I quite like the players, like they're fairly good. It's just these middling bleh that doesn't go anywhere or do anything. And I think it's because they haven't spent enough time like thinking about what specifically they think about something. Instead of just having a generalized feeling of I quite like this or whatever, like honing in on what you specifically like or specifically dislike or what you think is going to happen, like adding some specificity to it. And what that tends to do is it removes you from sitting on the fence. Like it's hard to be specifically on the fence. like I specifically think they have a 50% chance of winning this game.
Yeah, it is. Sure. I mean,
it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So when you tend to get more into specifics, you tend to get more into what you actually think, and it tends to remove you away from these wishy-washy things where you're hedging your bets.
What also comes across terribly is the exact opposite, where people are over the top trying to give 24/7 scorching takes. That also comes across as so inauthentic. I think that really turns off listeners as well, because it feels very attention-seeky and inauthentic rather
very
than
pick-me behavior.
You have to be. It's just about the duality of your honest opinions and giving the credit where it's deserved, and then
I don't like. I mean, in general, shows that are built around hot takes.
Same.
They're tough because they also, when people have a take that is unpopular or something, you want it to stand out. You want that level of authenticity so that you can revisit it when it either pays off or doesn't. And yeah, I think that's fun. Like at the moment, as we're recording, Crew are going on an unbelievable run.
We're getting to that one in a second, baby. Because I was going to segue that into one of the criticism that is always levied at analysts, commentators, opinion havers in the space is about people just being negative. And it's like I feel like it's just an easy way for everyone to say, yeah, because at face value, it is just you're trying to be kind and I suppose in a way do the right thing and you're trying to the idea is just to bring positivity, but I think as we were saying, it's just unrealistic and it doesn't create an authentic product. But is that how you feel about sort of that criticism that's frequently levied by pros, etc.?
I would say this is the area that I struggle to formulate opinions on the most in terms of my work and what I do, because I naturally have quite a critical outlook on things. I mean, if you were talking about some coaches are very, bigging their players up. Some coaches, like MCE, are ranting and raving and being very critical about a team that's even doing very well. And I tend to fall more on the critical side, not angry necessarily unless I'm doing it for humor, but if I notice something that I think could be improved, I quickly notice it and focus on that. Like, I think the way that I view when I'm even watching like Valorant, I'm thinking about the ideal form of what I want to happen and then contrasting that to what occurs. I'm not thinking about a ranked team and how much better the pros are than a ranked team. I'm thinking about when they drew this strat up, they wanted it to work perfectly, ideally. And this is the ideal. What has caused that to fail? Like, where were the problems that caused it to fail? Or if it succeeded, talking about it as if it was almost the ideal form of like, this flash was excellent, it pushed this person away, like that allows them to take this space, whatever the play is. But when you think about the game like that in terms of like having an ideal form and then its failure to be realized in reality, that does lend you to be critical, and you have to phrase your commentary or something in a way that doesn't just sound like they should always be perfect, because that's not reasonable either. They can't always be attaining perfection. And so trying to find that balance between what is reasonable for them to achieve and what their opponents are disrupting them from doing too, right? Because you're not just in a vacuum when you're doing this kind of stuff. But even if you take it outside of the Valorant context, like let's say we're talking about the broadcast or something, like, we cook up a desk segment, something goes wrong, I have in my head the ideal form of how this should all go, something gets beefed along the way, so feedback to deliver of like how to improve it for next time or how to fix the error or something. But that's a critical, but then how you deliver it is like wrapping it up in a feedback of like, this is what I think they should improve on. Like, I think saying they did this badly is different to this is what they were trying to do and they missed the mark, or this is what they should do next time to make sure it works well, all of that kind of stuff. On top of all of that though, I have noticed a lot of the things that do well are the negative stuff. I mean, anytime I'm molding on Plat Chat, the Karmine Corp stuff, it is the more funny negative. It's humorous, which takes the edge off it, perhaps. You have to try not to be laughing like at the players all the time, but it can be tough. And definitely the like TikTok of Scream missing his Molly, definitely laughing at him, right? So like that's something where I definitely I reflect on that a lot, because I don't want to be in a spot where the players feel like I'm using them for a cheap laugh whenever they fuck up.
Right.
And the point of the Karmine Corp videos mainly was that their system, like they built it terribly. But also Scream is the focus of that because he had so many failures individually and was given the like control of the entire roster. And then on top of all of that, you got to remember that they're humans and they interact with all of this content,
of course,
way more than they should, I think. I mean, the amount of pros that watch Plat Chat, and just if you're a pro, do not watch that.
Browse VLR.
Yeah. I mean, we're like using we're using the fucking practice PCs after the players because we're playing scrims and stuff, and they've got like VLR open. They've still got the threads like open. We're like, I would slap the players. Like, it's something that all of the commentators need to learn. Half of them, I mean, more than half of them, still haven't. You know, there's some egregious examples of like people with Twitch chat open while they're casting, or like, you know,
man. I mean,
and like replying to stuff on Reddit where you need that level of separation from the criticism, because when you're working in an entertainment and sports product, the criticism and the fans are allowed to express themselves negatively. That is part of being a fan, is being emotionally invested and therefore having those negative emotions and expressing those negative emotions like cathartically with other fans.
And that's what we do.
Yeah.
I mean, that is essentially what we do.
You can't take all of that away.
Yeah.
You can't just make it all like a space that is lacking any negative criticism towards the players, which means that, and towards us, right, as commentators, like I'm not going out there scrolling through the YouTube comments under a VOD or whatever, trying to find the people that don't like my commentary, right? It would be a terrible idea for my mentality, and it probably wouldn't be great feedback. I mean, I'd go to my peers or, you know, do my own VOD review or something if I wanted to improve. So, but I do struggle with that a little bit, as you know, especially with the stress that the players are under too. They're not supported as well as traditional sports players. They're not media trained like traditional sports players. They don't have people taking Twitter away from them when they're in a bad mental spot. It's so easy for them to get sunk into a depressive state or feel like, you know, their world's imploding because they're playing poorly at a period of time. And I don't want to the reason that someone feels like shit. So
yeah,
that is a big struggle for me at the moment, because a lot of the stuff I do is critical, and I don't want to be the reason that someone feels like shit.
I struggle with that too, because the thing that I'm most passionate about, I take the most interest in, given what I did with Ascent and my interest in roster building and GMing, is player skill. And I do feel terrible often calling out sounds very aggressive, but I suppose that is the case sometimes, having to do that, to be honest, when we're talking about a roster, like, this guy is not performing. Yeah. It is the elephant in the room. And to go back to what we were talking about before, it would be untruthful or inauthentic to not address that.
Right. And also the roster changes and people losing their jobs, it's a performance-based career. If you are, you know, dropping 5 kills every game, then you're not going to keep your spot. This is not a secret. And yet it still, especially on broadcasts where they're owned by the developers that like run the entire league. So that's the case with VALORANT and with Overwatch League too. They really, really dislike talking about players getting cut because they're losing their job, right? And that's like a massive deal for them. And it's not like they can go and always find another team that's ready to pick them up. For some people, their careers are just over. Yeah. So when... But you have to have those authentic conversations. It's not, you can't just bury your head in the sand. And also, again, like, I don't think that in an ideal world, GMs are not listening to Plat Chat to get their roster advice, but they do listen to other people like us. I'm not saying that all of the GMs are using Plat Chat to get their roster decisions, but the people that are in GMing positions, I mean, you were almost in a GMing position. There is not a large difference between us on Plat Chat and the GMs of some organizations. So the same things that we're talking about are going to be relevant thoughts for them. Do you know what I mean? Where it's
absolutely,
in an ideal world, they know way more than some random podcasters do. You know, in a sports environment, the GMs know tons more and have access to way better data and know all of the upcoming players, whereas the people on the podcast only really pay attention to like the tier 1 individuals. But that's not the world that we inhabit. Everyone's so close together. Like the difference between, you know, what we know and what the people in positions of power know is so similar that it feels much more influential. So you have to be careful about dancing around things. Because I don't want to say like, like the Xander Jake thing that I brought up recently on Plat Chat, where I was like, I mean, Xander would be a great pickup if Jake got cut. I don't want to put that out in the air and then it gain traction and be the reason that Jake lost his job.
Yeah,
like, I think it would be a good move. I mean, but I don't want that to. I don't want Jake to look at that and be like, this motherfucker's gonna get me cut.
Exactly. Or a brutal one. For context, right now during the LCQ and even previously, there's 2 teams from Latin America, Leviathan and Crew.
Yeah.
And the duelist key fragging players, the guy on Crew, Kesnan, has been having the best tournament of his life. And on the contrary, the guy who was good up until this year, Takolia on Leviathan, it just has to be addressed that he is playing the worst he's ever played.
Yeah.
And you want to show the head-to-head of the 2 biggest star duelists from Latin America, but the discrepancy is so massive that it just feels like you're brutalizing him.
Yeah.
But if you don't acknowledge it, you are doing a disservice to the actual story of the game and one of the key factors. But it still does feel just like you want to remind people, like, this was a guy who was really good. He's having a really bad year right now, though.
Yeah.
He could turn it around maybe and be that level again. But right now, my man has 1 first kill and 7 first deaths against this guy who they benched and is like going off against them now. But it does feel bad. And
one of the issues there that I also struggle with is that the job that I'm in at the moment, you have the ability, if you want to develop more personal relationships with players. Be friendly with them, talk to them often, use them as like a network for information, but also just be there friendly with them too. I have always gone the exact opposite direction from that. Unless a pro is directly like trying to make that happen, or it happens because they're on the desk or something, I tend not to try to interact with any of the pros in a personal level at all. And that also, generally speaking, is applied to like higher ups at Riot too. Like, I want to be in my own broadcast bubble. I do not want to be friends with John Riot, and I do not want to be friends with John Pro Player either, because I don't, the thought process there for me is that I want to view it as if I'm isolated from those factors that would sway me into not addressing a certain topic, right? Like, I want to be in a situation where I don't feel obliged to, cover up that Riot are fucking something up. I want to talk about all of that stuff. And then also, I don't want to have to dance around the fact that, like, Derek's had an awful event or something.
I was about to say, like me with 100 Thieves, I just like, I'm thinking about like when I'm on that episode and we have to talk about it, I don't want to say what I feel like I have to say, addressing the elephant in the room, because I do really like all those guys. But
so that's been my thing, is that I just remove that emotional part of it completely. But I'm not sure that that's necessarily the right way. Like, maybe the players would feel better about it if I was friends with them and shit talking them. I don't know.
Maybe. I honestly, though, I do feel like I don't think you get levied that criticism as much as other people. And maybe it is because I actually remember when I was first getting into Valorant and doing this, I was living with Jake, the Overwatch pro, in the house here. And he told me straight away, the best thing you can do is not be overly critical of what went wrong and talk about what they were trying to do.
Yeah.
And I always have tried to keep that in mind. And I know you do that as well. But I really do feel like that criticism doesn't get levied at you as much. Do you feel that way? And if you do, why?
I don't look at the criticism levied anyway. I don't.
Sure. I feel like you're not very on. I'm not looking at. I don't feel like you look at anything.
I don't look at anything. I literally. I used to a little bit. I've never been the kind of person to pore over stuff, but I used to occasionally, like scroll through a thread of what was happening or look on Twitter or whatever. In the last 2 years, no, just get it all gone. So I don't look at any of the criticism that gets levied towards other people either. So I'm not even really sure about that. But I would imagine if it is a lesson for me, it's probably because I try to get specific with it. And so people can see the thought process that leads to the end result. Like, for example, if I'm talking about why a player's doing really badly, like, for example, I was talking about Leviathan playing terribly, and I'm talking about Taco being 1-7 in first kills to first deaths. Like, how are you going to tell me that that's unfair criticism? How can you tell me that's overly harsh when I'm just saying what's occurred? Like, I'm not. I don't know. That's my thought process. It's just like, it's. Yeah, I don't know. It's just what's happening.
Personally,
it's just factual.
Right.
Some people are bad.
That is part of it. I also think there's two other factors that people appreciate. Again, I don't know if it's conscious or unconscious, but the fact that you turn a lot of it into humor.
Yeah, I think that
important.
Helps. Yeah.
And also, when you end up being wrong, there is no one better at taking a pie to the face and just becoming the butt of the joke.
Yeah.
I mean, when Zeta Division went on the run and and all of it, Japan despised you. Like, your apology video and all of, like, that was just funny. And you were telling them when you were in Tokyo for the Masters event,
people were going nuts.
They all loved you. Were trying to take pictures with you, and
it was
like that
crazy.
Just total 180 on the attitude online.
We were there just eating dinner, and there's some random people on another table, like, looking over at me, going like, "Ooh," like that. And I was like, "What the? Like, we're just out at dinner, like, just a random place. We're nowhere near the event at all." And some people in a Zeta jersey are just over in the other corner, like, pointing at me like, "Oh, that's the guy that turned the Zeta upside down." Which I didn't, by the way. That was Kurt.
That was the producer. But you did do the apology with you slowly. I mean, it was super funny.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing with... And the criticism is humorous, like with Karmine Corp, which is, I think, also why they kind of got over it and, like, didn't one of the... I think it was, like, Zeish, or they're, like... not Zeish. They're... I forget the name.
PM, the coach?
The assistant coach who plays.
Yeah, Zeish. Yeah.
That is his name. Oh, okay.
Or
I was getting him confused with the commentator in EU who...
Zesh.
Zesh, yeah. Wait, that is his name, right? Like, he was joking in your chat when you were watching them and rooting for them, because I think they appreciate that it's not... You show exactly what you mean, and there is evidence, but then also you are making it humorous, and I think that's clear.
Yeah,
but
and I'm also not, like... I'm not angry and upset when they start doing well, right? Like, I'm readjusting my thoughts based on the new evidence. Like, if they start playing better, I'm going to tell you they're playing better. Yeah. I'm not going to keep saying they're bad while they're winning. Like, I'm going to say they were bad, now they're better. And also, I think for stuff like the Zeta run, if you're not seriously saying this team was dog shit and became excellent, you're missing their story. You're changing history. You're saying that they were great and were expected to come top 3 in Reykjavik. And then every other tournament where they've done badly is therefore them underperforming. And, like, they're in a massive slump all the rest of their careers. No, they were bad. They had a miracle run, and then they returned back to being quite a mediocre squad. And it reframes everything about their narrative. And if you're not accurate with it, and you're not harsh in the moments where you are, like, supposed to be, then you don't get the upswing as well. You know, if you just tell people or not tell people, but if you tell yourself the story that they were always good, then they didn't do anything.
Of course, and the same thing is happening right now at this tournament with the crew.
And no one can argue they were good.
No, I mean, they went 0-9 in the regular season, and then you also said they weren't going to get double digits in either map against Leviathan, and they absolutely smoked them with such ease.
Oh, and God.
But when you're wrong like that, is your first inclination just, how do I make this funny? How do I make myself the butt of the joke now?
That's not always my first inclination, no, because I think usually the players should be the focus. Like, I'm not immediately trying to think, like, how can I draw this back to me? But I think for this one, because we literally had a segment that was like hot takes, and my take at the time was the crew have only beaten teams because... So I've reflected on this, right? So I was watching the games like Crew MIBR, Crew Furia. MIBR and Furia were playing poorly. But when I watched that and I saw Crew and Furia and MIBR playing poorly, I then extrapolated that they were winning because they were playing poorly. Whereas what was actually happening was they were playing poorly and Crew was playing well. And I had just missed, because I was so focused on them being like bad, that it wouldn't continue against better teams. Leviathan also played some horrible Valorant in that series. But I think, again, I wanted to be very critical about Leviathan and still have that excitement about Crew. But if you're railing Leviathan and talking about how dreadful they are after they've already lost 4 matches in a row, that does come across as very critical. If you're a sad clown that's disappointed because Crew are going on a miracle
putting
run,
on the clown suit
Yeah.
on the main broadcast.
Yeah.
It's just...
Yeah, if you're wearing a red nose and you're a sad clown because you're disappointed in a team that you thought was going to pick it back up, then you're putting yourself on the side of Lev. You're framing it as like, I wanted Lev to do well, and they haven't. Instead of, this team is shit.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, my team is bad compared to your team is bad.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I feel like in a lot of those in situations like that, in situations like the Karmine Corp thing or the Zeta division thing, more so than the Crew situation, because that's just kind of funny. This is about to be a weird comparison I'm about to draw, but hear me out.
Yeah.
I remember you telling me, I can't remember what event it was, but when you were coming back to Austin, I think, that your plane was on fire.
Yeah.
And your reaction was just, nah.
Yeah.
And everyone else, you said people on this plane were freaking out.
People on the plane
screaming.
were panicking and like climbing over each other. And I was like, what the hell are you doing? Like, relax. It's only on fire.
Which is, I mean, in a vacuum, kind of a fucking mental response to a lot of people would just also be panicking. Or if they thought that they'd have your reaction, they probably wouldn't.
Yeah.
Again, weird comparison to draw, but it just seems like in chaos, you're just...
I don't have a stress response.
Right.
I literally don't. Since I was like a child, I don't have a panic response. In fact, it's a bad thing in a lot of situations. Oh, maybe not a lot, but like in some situations, because I sit there and think about what I should do when other people react. You know, like if that was actually a dangerous situation, I'd be ambling out of the plane, last one out, fucking hair on fire. Or not hair on fire, but you know what I mean. But you know, my initial reaction to anything, like if there was an explosion next door, my initial reaction would just be like, whoa, what was that? Like, let's go and check it out. Like, I wonder what that was. Not, oh, I wonder if that's going to happen again and we should leave immediately. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, it's not something I've worked on. There's a lot of things that I've actively worked on, but not being panicked is something that's just, I can't make myself react quickly to things.
Where does that come from?
I don't know. I mean,
it's just always been the case.
It's just always been the case. Like, for example, I love scaring when I was growing up, love scaring my other siblings. I'm the older sibling. Love, like, you know, hiding in a closet, leaping out of them, that kind of thing. My mum gets startled very easily. My little sister does as well. I didn't do it with the 2 younger siblings too much, but I had a sister that's like, I mean, I have a sister that's like 2 years younger than me, and would do it with her all the time. Like, hiding in wardrobes, hiding like under the beds and stuff. And then she would try and get me back. And I literally don't process that a jump scare has happened until I've already had the thought of, this is not dangerous.
Right.
God, scary movies are so they don't do anything for me because the jump scare happens and I like take a full second to process it. And then I'm like, oh, I just don't have the like jump.
You have triggered a traumatic memory. When I was 13 and my friend's older sister, we watched The Ring. If you're familiar with that.
Is that the one with the hair in front of her face?
Yes.
She crawls out a well or something.
Yeah, and like
or
comes out of the TV, both. Yeah. And also her girlfriend had long black hair, and in the middle of the night just woke us up with the hair in front of her face, and it scared the absolute shit out of me. And that's a traumatic memory that I have that you just brought up. But also, I mean, I just we were talking about it a bit with the pie on the face thing, but where does that come from too? Is that just the culture of how you like grew up in your household or the people you're around? Because you are better at that than anyone I have ever met. It feels like you are so happy to always be the butt of the joke, and it does not affect you in any way. You know it's going to come across as funny, and you're just totally cool with it. I mean, it's like we're talking about with you streaming, with your brand being you're bad.
Yeah.
And I remember that. I don't know, did that start in TF2 because you had that back then as well?
Yeah, it was definitely a thing in TF2. I mean, there's a lot there. I don't know. I mean, I think when I was a kid, I was a little like anxious, awkward child, very nerdy child. I used to go and tell poetry to my neighbors dressed up in a bow tie and fake glasses in a rough neighborhood where like as soon as we moved out when I was like 5, some kids got put in jail for throwing rocks at a baby. Like they lived in a very poor, rough neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I was the weird child that would go next door reading poetry to the neighbors. Like weird, nerdy kid. And then at school had just like a small friend group, but yeah, like a bit nerdy. And then I realized that I could make friends by making people laugh. And it just was like, holy shit, where's this come from? And then that's like from the age of, I don't know, 14, that's just, I mean, that it's a cheat code.
Right.
It's a cheat code.
Like
you can just, So I just focused on that, I guess. Probably from a innate level of it was getting me like value in my life from friendship and stuff. But yeah, I was teased a lot by my family in a loving way. I have a very close family, but they do love to tease each other. So we're very argumentative, very close, but you always know that the arguments and the teasing are not personal attacks because it never goes anywhere. There's never large fallings out or whatever. But like my auntie would call me rat boy when I was younger. And my dad would call me the slug and stuff. I can't even remember where rat boy came from, but my auntie would be like, ratty little rat boy. Literally can't recall. And I'd just be like, hey, what's up? And then like, I was just kind of like a classic lazy teenage boy. And my dad would call me the slug. He's like, there he is, the slug again. But those are not, it doesn't feel mean-spirited or rude or anything because they are extremely loving people. They were just teasing me about some of the, like, less, like, good parts about my personality that I needed to work on, right? And so I don't think I associate being, like, if someone gives me a comment that's really mean-spirited, I usually find it incredibly funny. Like, the harsher it is, the funnier it is to me, which is part of the Twitch chat culture in my chat, is people, what I like, a lot of people really dislike my Twitch chat culture. I know that Bren and Kurt fucking hate it. They don't want it for Plat Chat in general. But I love it because the viewers don't get angry at each other or angry at, like, the world generally in my chat. They get angry at me. If they're being vicious or rude, they're not being vicious or rude to, like, you know, other people or like players that I'm playing with or something. They're being rude to me. And I think that creates a good culture as long as you're fine with it, because I find it funny. And like, you've tuned in to watch me. Like, you keep tuning in to watch me. Like, yeah, I'm a big, dumb, bald dude, and you're tuning in to watch me. Which one of us is more stupid?
I mean, that is what I love about what we do, though, is, I mean, I just, like, a memory came to mind of even just on the last episode when I picked 100 Thieves to win LCQ and just gave my reasons, and then I just said, because I know you're going to fucking roast me, and then I just say, any criticizers? And immediately, you're just like, yes, that's a dreadful take. It's just like, that is exactly what I want to hear. It's just, I mean, it's just
funny.
Man.
Like, some of the best ones were the Japanese ones after the Zeta Division stuff.
Oh my god!
Because because half of them are like Google translated on their side, so they would send me English. That, I mean, maybe it sounded more vicious in Japanese. I'm not sure, but it was like, you must save so much money on shampoo. That was the whole message. I was like, that's genius. That's so good.
Yeah, it's just so, like, it's just funny and kind of innocent in a way. There's like a sweetness to it almost.
Yeah.
Like,
well, there's the other thing too, right? Is that I have not had a rough life. I have not had a life where I've been oppressed for something, shoved down, bullied. Like, I don't have that history of being of being like bullied by people around me. So I'm not sensitive about anything particularly. If I had spent my entire life as, like, I don't know, a kid getting bullied about my weight or my height or my looks or my race or whatever, and then people were doing that same thing in the chat, then that doesn't, it's not funny anymore. It's just more of the same shit that you've always had to deal with. So I have a very privileged position to enjoy being shit talked, because I don't have anything that people have, like, attacked me for heavily in the past. I don't have insecurities about any of that stuff, and I don't have any history of people being bigoted towards me for whatever reason. Yeah, right. So it's like a very chill spot that I can enjoy.
Yeah, I think something I've thought about a lot in the past couple of years is just how kind of the opposite. I used to get bullied all the time for being really quiet and awkward. That was like a defense mechanism, and it used to piss me off so much.
Right.
When I was growing up, and I genuinely believe that's why I do everything I do, is just to show people that I talk. I really believe that's why. Yeah. I mean, to the extent that I mean, this is genuinely, like, fucked up, but we had this thing at the end of my school year when we were graduating. There was this, like, presentation in the cafeteria, because I had, like, a really small graduating class, and we would have, like, a homeroom teacher duo that you spent, like, all 4 years of being in this high school with, and they did this book giveaway where they would read the title of a book, and it was associated with someone in this class, and it would be like, who is it? And they read out a book called Quiet as a Mouse, and I immediately just was seeing red and was already just ready to stand up and be I was so mad.
Yeah.
And I stood up, and then they gave it to someone else. And this is genuinely fucked up. This is so 2000s of them. This was like a liberal arts school, by the way.
Yeah.
They gave it to this girl who was a Chinese exchange student, and the English was not their native language. I mean, that which is insanity. But also, when I think about that, what's funny and representative of the whole thing to me, if there was $1 billion on the line, couldn't tell you what I got. What book they gave me.
Sure.
Could not tell you. I have no memory of it at all. And I'm so convinced that that's what pushed me into doing all of this.
Yeah.
Do you have a thing or a reason, I mean, that you feel is why you've gotten into this space of broadcasting and podcasting, all that, streaming?
Yeah, no, not really. I live my life like a piece of fluff sailing through the wind. Like, when I was at school, I was just at school doing school stuff, just doing stuff. I would play whatever sports were available, and we didn't really have many opportunities to do stuff that was, like, extracurricular. It was just a very small school. They didn't really offer too much. I'd go in, do my work, was good at my work, okay, go home. So then get to like the age of 16 or whatever, and I'm at the top of the class. So I'm like, okay, well, what do you do if you have good grades? And it's like, oh, well, you become like a doctor or a lawyer or something.
Yeah, how did that go?
So, I mean, great. But that's what I mean. Like, I just was on like a conveyor belt of doing good in school, therefore go and do some kind of good career. And I looked at the careers that were like, you know, paid fairly well in the UK and you needed good grades to get. And I was like, sure, I'll do some like doctoring or something. And so I applied to med school, got into med school, carried on like doing that. And I was like, man, this shit sucks. And all throughout that, what I'd been doing as just a hobby that my friend had got me into was playing video games and then competing in video games. And I'm pretty certain if it had been something else, I would have just done something else.
Yeah, I mean, for those who don't know, what happened in medical school, Josh?
I didn't like it. And okay, so one of the ways that they get you acclimatized to medical school is that they give you some mentor from like a higher year up. So I think it was like a guy that was in his third year or something, had a group of kids. I mean, I say kids, we're like 18 years old, but first year students, and you're showing them the ropes. They go out, they show you like, hey, here's the good like drinking spots to socialize. Here's the good like clubs to join. Here's whatever. But one of the things that they also did was they gave books, crazy expensive. I mean, actually the system in the UK works fairly well, though people in the UK won't tell you that because they haven't experienced the horror that is the United States of America. But textbooks are extremely expensive. Like when you're at medical school, you're already paying the maximum amount you can in tuition fees, which again in the UK is only $9,000 a year, which actually is not bad compared to the US, but seems terrible because that's the max amount. And then you're expected to pay for your textbooks. You're expected to pay for like extracurricular things to help you learn. You're expected to go and, you know, pay for video lessons externally to the class. And when you turn up to the class, they ask you, what did you learn this week? They don't sit there and teach you everything you're supposed to know. So there's a lot of going out and teaching yourself based on the resources that are available, but also a lot of those you have to pay for. So one of the third year students tend to pass on free versions of a lot of the textbooks and lectures and that kind of stuff. And they had a folder, I think it was called the Sky Drive at one point because it was like the Microsoft thing. I think they rebranded it, but they had that full of a few different things. And I was like, this is really inefficient. It's scattered between a lot of different people. We don't all have the same resources. Let me fix this for you. So I gathered everything I could into one large place, all of the free textbooks, all of the free videos, went out and sourced some of my own. There was example pieces of coursework in there, like tons of helpful things. And then I left it for like 2 years, forgot about it, and it was just getting passed around the entire school. Just this link was just getting passed to people I had never met before. It was just, and at some point, some fucking idiot tried to hand in an example piece of coursework as his own coursework with the name of the person who originally wrote it. It was never intended to be a cheating thing. It's an example to show you roughly what they're looking for. Like, and the fucking, you know the worst part? The piece of coursework was an essay on probity, which is like doing the right thing ethically. You had to write about
the irony
probity
is
as a doctor.
Shocking.
Yeah. Probity and professionalism. And it was an essay on that was like, it was only 2 A4 pages. My dude could have written it while he was drunk after a night out. And he didn't. He just handed it in with a different person's name at the bottom. And the teacher recognized it as like a former student's piece of work. And it was obviously not his. So he was like, where did you get this from? And he's like, oh, I'm in trouble. Let me just dob this guy in. So he just gave the link to the administration of this entire thing and started a massive process because, again, the whole point is that if you're being a doctor, you're supposed to act with the utmost ethics and professionalism because you're in positions where you have control over people's lives, and what you're doing to them has to be absolutely ethically approved, evidence-based, ethically approved. And they view infractions like what I did of essentially, taking copyrighted materials and distributing them for free as a mark on your character. Like, if you're going to do that, then what's going to stop you from signing your initials into people's livers? Which is something that people have done, by the way.
Jesus.
Or giving your own sperm instead of the people at the sperm banks. Again, that's what doctors are up to.
I mean, so what happened then? What
kicked me
happened
out. They kicked me out of med school.
Was this between? Were you just in TF2 at the time?
Yeah.
Or
it was.
Okay.
It was 20. It was. This was all happening towards the end of 2015 and the kind of through the middle of 2016. It was right when Overwatch was releasing as well.
Right.
And I was about to go into my 4th year of medicine in the UK. That's a 5-year course. So I was in my 4th year. I just started my 4th year, and then. But I'd started while all of this was going on. It was a multi-month process. And then, I got to the end of it, hadn't told my parents about any of it, and then rang them up and was like, I'm kicked out. And they were like, "What? Say what now?"
What was... I know possibly the worst part. I know definitely for them. What did they say when other members of the family would ask, "Oh, how's Josh doing in medical school?"
Well, I mean, I would just tell when I told my parents, I told the whole family.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they didn't really have any. Well, I mean, maybe they did. I don't know.
Yeah. After that is when Overwatch came out, and then you were just all in on that because you had.
I wasn't all in on that. My parents told me to move home and get a real job.
Did you get a real job?
No. I told them I was applying for real jobs whilst writing Overwatch articles.
Right, for over GG. How much were you making writing those articles for?
$10 an article.
How much time were you spending on each article?
Depends what they were, but more than $10 worth.
Now, I have a vague memory because it seems like you have a bad streak, okay?
Mm-hmm.
What happened when you broke into your own house to throw a party?
No, I didn't. Did I throw a party that day? No, I don't. I think I broke into my own house to get some clothes or something. But yeah, I can't remember exactly what the purpose was.
I swear
my parents were out of town.
I swear it was something like you broke into your own house, you were going to throw a party, and then you just, and you played game like TF2 all
Probably.
day.
Probably.
It was something stupid.
That sounds really likely. Yeah, I mean, the only way to get into my house without like breaking the doors down was to get in through the loft windows that I knew were slightly open. So I broke into the garage door because that had a faulty lock. Got the ladder out, got the ladder onto the roof.
Onto the roof?
Onto the roof.
Did you go down the fucking chimney like Santa Claus?
No, I went into the loft windows.
Oh, okay.
They have like, the like slanting roofs with the windows that kind of pop open.
Oh, yeah,
So I slithered in.
Oh, the slippery eel.
Yeah.
And then when did you start playing TF2? Did you just play it once and fall in love with it immediately? Because that's what happened for me.
I can't really remember. I didn't play many video games growing up. I played like the Pokemon games on like a Nintendo DS or something. And then I played, I got a PS2 when I was 13, I think. And played Jak and Daxter and Ratchet and Clank and those kind of games, which were goated.
Classics.
And then, that was my first PC game. My first PC game was Assassin's Creed. And then I played TF2 afterwards. And I liked it. I liked playing with my friend as well. Like I had a friend that lived nearby that played it too. And it was my first time playing an online game, like a multiplayer game where you could interact with other people. And that just changed all of my perception of gaming.
Were you on a determined mission to make it into Prem and be the GOAT?
No.
It just happened because you were playing the game?
I was playing the game a lot and realized that people would play it competitively. Like they used to have leaderboards in the public servers. So I would try to get to the top of the leaderboard based on like, I guess it was like how many kills you got over the time that you spent there or something. And then at that point, like okay, if you get bored of doing that, what's the next step? Well, try and get together with some of the people that are regulars on that server and fight against some regulars on another server. And then we looked into it and we were thinking like, well, how do we frame this? Like, what is a good competition? Like, how many players should we even have on each team? And we Googled it and we were like, wait, people play this game competitively? Like, actually? And we're like, maybe we should go and check that out. And so we did. And then I found like a website that people were running stuff and started at the bottom level and then just played, basically.
Yeah, I was just so addicted immediately.
Yeah.
Straight away just wanted to be the best. I was just beyond all in from the jump.
I'm not really that competitive of a person. I prefer it a lot more if the people I'm playing against are having fun. Like when I play sports with my family or whatever, or when I play, like casually with other people, I'll sandbag constantly to like keep them entertained. I actually find it really enjoyable to play worse in a way that they can't tell. And that is actually what I really enjoy about streaming too, is manufacturing dumb situations with realistic beginnings.
Right.
That to me is the craft.
Yeah.
That is the craft. Is finding yourself in the stupidest position possible whilst it being believable that you got into that spot trying to do the best thing.
Absolutely. I mean, I definitely...
So that you're not just straight trolling.
I mean, yeah, there's definitely some... there are some moments that I remember from editing those videos that were just... You had to be 1000% trolling. The iconic fucking grab well with like 4 seconds left that ruined Bren's day. I mean, he was beyond upset.
But that one also, again, I've seen like clips on YouTube of people doing these mid-air grabs, which if you time them correctly, like looks so cool. I'm sure the content creators go out there and just feed for hours trying to get these kind of clips set up. I mean, for a Valorant equivalent, if people are watching, it's like getting the perfect Omen outplay where you like TP behind someone or whatever. Oh no, it's actually quite similar to, when people fire the shock darts directly upwards after the plant and then the person defusing ends up dying from it or something.
Yeah, yeah.
But then doing that at the wrong time, telling your teammates you're going to pull off the incredible outplay and then beefing it horribly and listening to their reaction, that is perfect for me. I would take a situation like that over winning the biggest tournaments in the world every time.
Yeah, that is, I mean...
It's just, it fills me with joy.
Sums it up. Bren's absolute anguish filling you with joy. I've never seen him so upset. That moment was the pinnacle. He was so fucking mad. But I tried to deep dive on TF2 when you started casting, because of the earliest video, you were casting a scrim with Immunity, the Australian team that came to I-40, whatever, 6, 9, something like that. And then, I mean, God, you were like on a team called Vertex or something. And then,
oh, wow. Yeah, that's like Div 2.
Yeah, that was in like the ancient days. And then, also, tie-in question really quick before I ask you when you actually did start casting for real. I don't know if that was actually the first one.
I don't know.
But how would you say the acronym for heads-up display?
HUD.
Dude, in this video, you were saying
Hood.
Yeah, it was killing me. Your accent is so...
It shifted massively.
So much.
And the wild part is that it had even shifted at that point more towards how I speak now, because I'd been at university for a while, and I'd been, hanging around with a lot of people from towards the south, or actually just also more affluent people that went to university that had accents that weren't as down in the muck as I was.
Yeah,
because I had an extremely thick accent, and there's a lot of things that I've changed about how I like do things, including like my accent has changed dramatically, but it was a very conscious effort to try and change it. And now it comes seamlessly, except when I'm upset. And then I'll go back, what the fuck are they doing? Or something like that. And
you definitely hear when you get mad.
And then, Beth tells me that I do it quite a lot when, when I was cheering people on, when I was getting excited watching Wimbledon this year, I was going, come on,
yeah,
that kind of thing. But yeah, during, I can't remember exactly when it was, but it was at some point, I think in 2014, I started casting.
That was when that video was uploaded.
Yeah, and I tried to go back through and find my first cast, and I found a cast on Badlands of 2 Prem teams playing, where it was me and Commander X, who currently I think is doing some coaching in Valorant as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've seen him around. So, yeah, he's... the first time that I casted, I was extremely nervous. My teeth were chattering, and you could hear it through the mic. Yeah. I just hadn't done any form of public speaking before at all. It was brand new to me. So it felt very... I mean, there was like 400 people watching, which felt like a huge amount.
Oh,
at the time,
TF2,
at the time, though, I was also streaming to like 10 people.
Right,
who are all my friends.
Right.
So,
just all the channels are just Stark.
Yeah.
Whomever.
Butt nose.
Yeah, butt nose, the OG viewer. Yeah, and I mean, I was just going through the depths of like the last couple years of TF2 for you, like the info show LAN. If you remember,
the Lithuanian
LAN, where your shower exploded. Like whatever that
was fantastic. Yeah. We were just in the shower, and the handle that you, or not the handle, but like the knob that you turn for hot and cold, someone wanted it hot, and they were like, it's not hot enough. And they just kept turning it, and it was just a screw, and it just came off. And it just, or they'd loosened it enough that the pressure built up, and it fired. And it went, boom, and fired off. And then the force of that happening knocked the shower handle down, because it was one of those that's just mounted on a little grip, and it whacked them on the head as well. I can't remember exactly who it was. I think it was my Norwegian friend called Ethug that was in the shower at the time.
Yeah.
Although it might have been somebody else. I can't exactly recall. This is what I love, though, about doing those stories, is that I can go back and listen to that and reform the memories in my head. Memories are horrendously... unreliable. They're more to do with what you tell yourself than what you actually experienced. So getting them down in a form that I can then listen back to them is really valuable. Everybody experiences funny situations all the time. You just don't you don't put them into a story to memorize them. And that has been really rewarding.
Yeah, I also saw doubled up with that at the info show LAN. How do you remember how that ended?
The whole LAN, yeah. We had a massive delay because they were running some kind of Dota tournament or something. So we only got started super late into the day. And then we were waiting. I think we were in the final, waited until maybe 6 a.m., something like that. And they were cleaning up the entire place. And one of the cleaners tripped over a power cord and took the power out for the whole venue. And it was just done.
And then didn't it just end in a coin flip? You literally flipped a coin.
Yes, the entire thing ended in a coin flip. Yeah, Bren is just calling me for some reason, and I have no idea why.
Do you want to pick that up?
No, I'm gonna give him
just ignore him.
No, I'm gonna text him and say, "What do you want? I'm in an important business meeting." Yeah,
I do. I mean, actually, well, first of all, when did you start doing the commentary? It was in 2014.
Yeah.
When did you start doing it with Bren? I distinctly remember when Bren started casting, and you could immediately tell that he was better than a lot of other people in TF2. He was just good straight away. Yeah.
He had a feel for it instantly. Well, almost instantly. His first cast was very funny. If you go back and watch his very first one, he said "at the moment" about 72 times.
At least he didn't say, what did he say about, when did he say something? Did he say like big dick during one of the cast?
He said incredible dick during the Copenhagen finals, because he was meaning to saying incredible pick or something like that. He said incredible dick. Just shouted
in front
it.
of hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
A nice little final.
Yep.
Riot Games really appreciates that one.
But yeah, I started casting with Bren. I only casted with him like twice in TF2, I think. I didn't cast with him a lot. Yeah.
We did the DreamHack finals.
Yeah, we did some DreamHack. We did I-58 as well, something like that. But I really started working with Bren mostly in Overwatch, because he was trying to go into Overwatch as well. And with Bloodsire, actually, deep cut reference for anybody that was...
he was great.
TF2, he was fantastic. He just has a good, normal job. Yeah, if you want to work in esports, step one, be unemployed and looking for any scrap of money.
Absolutely. I mean, that was what it was for me when we started Plat Chat Valorant. I literally have nothing to lose. I'll just watch VODs all day. And I don't know what else I'd be doing.
Do you have anything better to do? If yes, you don't belong.
I mean, it's genuinely true. Especially back then. Like, the broadcasts and everything were so... the decisions that were being made were asinine. And then also back then, it was just the attempts to be like real sports. I mean, you and Bren were commentating the Team Fortress 2 finals for what, like 2,000 people maybe at DreamHack. You're both wearing suits.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't even do... I mean, no one really does that now outside of like what the major, the absolute...
Counter-Strike people do.
Yeah, like
for,
the absolute
for the
biggest
games,
tournaments.
Yeah.
Just wearing suits, watching, what, 2 teams? And then, I mean, again, how did that tournament end, Josh?
That one at DreamHack ended... Why do all of these have stupid ways of ending?
Because these tournaments, the budget was $50, and they like you'd win a mouse pad.
I mean, that one had more scheduling problems. So we were at DreamHack, but we were in the expo area, and the expo area has a sharp 11 p.m. We must evacuate all the people from this area. Don't know exactly why that's the policy, but everyone had to leave at 11 p.m. And I'm commentating the match. I'm also doing the administration for the tournament, and I'm like, we fucked up. Oh no, oh no, because it was getting closer and closer and closer to 11 p.m. It gets there, and we still have another map to play. And I'm like, it's game over. It's game over, boys. It's a draw. The tournament ended in a draw.
It was like a best of 5, and it was on map 5, right?
Yeah.
It's just that is the quintessential low budget esports doing whatever you can to just get any kind of scrap of a tournament running. Yeah. Was that the one as well where you slept in a McDonald's overnight?
No, that was the next DreamHack when I was there to cover Overwatch events.
Oh.
So that was DreamHack winter. It was very cold, and I turned up too late, and my hotel wouldn't let me in. There was no one there. Even though I'd booked the room, there was no receptionist. So I turned up. I was like, well, I'm shit out of luck, and walked like an hour down the road to the only place I could think of that would be open, which was a McDonald's, and I just slept in a booth in the McDonald's.
Just like in a Swedish McDonald's or wherever the fuck.
Yeah, in a Swedish McDonald's.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I mean, were the tournaments in early Overwatch reasonable? How did you start getting those as well? Like, what was your path to actually getting those gigs? Because did they give a shit that you casted a TF2?
Not really. No, not at all. I mean, the path for most people to get the gigs was know who the tournament organizers were. We got in touch with one tournament, and me, Bloodsire, and Bren did some casting at the beginning, which was pretty dreadful. I mean, it was when the game first released. We didn't really know what we were doing. There wasn't a kill feed and stuff. Or maybe there was just a kill feed, but the HUD in general was like very, very poor. And we started getting into it. I mean, I didn't get a proper opportunity until I'd done quite a lot of video content for Overwatch and people and article writing too. So people knew that I was somebody that was around, and then they just needed a warm body to commentate something. I think the first commentary thing that I really got was an event that got cancelled.
I actually remember that.
MSI MGA at the end of 2016.
I remember that.
The entire tournament got cancelled. It had like big teams that were turning up. I was going to be casting with Uber, with Mitch.
Oh, really?
And I was going to be doing color, and he was going to be commentating, and they canceled the whole event because they were running it on laptops.
Hell yeah! Were you shocked that you got the call up to Overwatch League, or what? Did they like call you and you did an interview? What happened with that?
No, we were doing contenders before that, so that was the part that was the first foot in the door. I did an event called Takeover or Take TV, which is like a studio in Germany. And that, I believe, was... I'm not 100% on this, but I think Mitch was involved in like selecting the talent and wanted me and Bren to try with him there because we were kind of local. We lived in the UK. We had some broadcast experience, and we were supposed to have been given a shot like 6 months earlier, but hadn't been able to. And I'd just done a little bit of online broadcast before that as well, for a tournament called Overwatch Pit. And I knew the teams. Like I had during the tournament clearly known the teams, known what I was talking about, like demonstrated some capability and knowledge. So they were like, oh, okay, let's bring these guys to a LAN event and we'll do some commentary there, because we were local and had shown some ability to do that. And then after that, they were like, okay, well, you did a pretty good job there, so let's carry on to invite you into Denver. So I spent 7 weeks in like Colorado, in Golden, I think the area
I've heard
was.
Some demonic stories about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That time in Colorado.
Stuff. And then at the end of that, they basically took the best people from Contenders and just put them into Overwatch League.
Right. Were they... I mean, when you got that, was that just the thank God moment?
Yeah, I wasn't expecting to get Overwatch League that year. I was hoping that I would get in on the second year of Overwatch League, because I knew that there was a lot of big names from, Counter-Strike and League of Legends and that kind of stuff that were going to be coming in. And Monty and Doe, for example, didn't do the Contenders stuff, but we knew that they were doing Overwatch League. So we knew that there weren't that many commentary spots, and we had been doing a lot of commentary and then doing some desk work too. And they liked what we'd done because frankly, I don't think they could find enough people that wanted to do desk work. It was 4 days a week, like first in, last out, pretty bad schedule, not particularly rewarding work either, because it's Overwatch on the desk. There's not that much to like break down and have fun with. So they wanted us to move into doing full-time desk stuff. And yeah, at that point it was like, okay, we've made it, because that's a year-long contract at that point. It was a lot of security.
Now, we were talking about this before, because like an hour before we were coming here to record, basically the news dropped that the Overwatch League is dead next year. And it would have been, I mean, I have questions about there was going to be like, Josh, what do you think about the future of the league? And then 1 hour after we finish recording, then the news drops. Yeah. That would have been a tragedy. So luckily the league died before we started recording. That's cool. Very, very fortunate.
Cool of them.
But going back to the beginning, what at the foundational level were the issues with the league to begin with that have gotten us to this point?
I mean, so many things. I think partly they sold a dream that was super unrealistic. You go back and listen to Nate Nanzer just peddling the snake oil at the beginning, and it's absurd. He's talking about how he wants it to be as big as the NFL, and how he won't be happy unless every player's got like a sports car and a babe on their hip or something. It's fucking ludicrous. Like, I mean, it's absolutely so bonkers. And it drew the ire of people who were involved in esports because, and for good reason, because it was obviously bullshit.
Or real sports, you mean, right?
No, esports. I mean, people like Richard Lewis and stuff were like, this is a scam.
Oh, that it was a scam. Yeah. But it lured in like real sports guys, right? Like they were getting sold the dream.
They were getting sold the dream, absolutely. Yeah. And, then there's the middle ground of people like me who are like, obviously it's not going to be this big. That's stupid.
I mean, it is ludicrous.
But also, it's going to be a good opportunity for something. Like there's gonna be something here. But I mean, way too high estimations on what was going to be done. The product itself is not a great esport to watch. It's just not a great viewer product. They were unclear about what they wanted to do with the broadcast itself. They didn't really know. Like, they had a good technical team, but there was a lot of people involved that were from sports that didn't have a clue about video games. They presented it in a really, like, buttoned up, strange manner that didn't appeal to the viewers particularly.
No one could really say anything interesting at all.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, what we were talking about before, ride the middle ground at all times.
Yeah. Definitely. And also it hurt even further by the fact that the teams had paid for the spots, so they had say in how it all worked. I mean, they have voting power on how it all functions, and yet we're getting so little back because their value was when the league gets as big as the NFL. So they didn't have good revenue systems in place. They charged the teams far too much. The game itself was not getting very large viewership. It was a fun tier 2 esport that was sold as a tier 1.
Even beyond a tier 1.
Yeah.
I mean, just insanity. Did you feel like you had much say as time went on? Like, hey, could we try and do this on the broadcasts, maybe?
Yeah.
Did they listen?
Yeah, I mean, they did for small things, for sure. Like, throughout the first year in 2018, I was trying to push things in a more fun direction with different, aspects on the desk. But also, I was fairly inexperienced at the time, so I didn't really know, like, great moves. And anything that was big was almost impossible. Like, the small segment production stuff. Yeah, and in 2019, got a bit looser with, like, the desk. And the desk product has actually been pretty good this year of, like, Overwatch.
Yeah, I've seen.
Overwatch League desk.
Nice.
It's been fun. I've been enjoying it. I've been tuning in. They've got to a good point now where they're actually producing a good show right when it died.
Yeah, that is very unlucky. Did they, as time went on, do you think they're making more good decisions or bad decisions throughout the years of the league?
For Overwatch League?
Yeah.
I mean, I think they made better decisions, but they were given just a failed project at the start. Like, the guy that's in charge of it, I mean, I'm talking about, like, John Spector and Sean Miller, who took over from Nate as the commissioner. Maybe commissioner isn't their real title, but whatever. They, like, run the entire league. They were making better decisions with the format, with how they were presenting the product, with that kind of stuff. They made it more fun, but also they had inherited such a terrible legacy and teams that were less inclined to want to commit because the viewership wasn't there and the rewards weren't there. The incentive structure didn't make sense. So, yeah, they're making it as fun as it can be.
Right. And, well, we've arrived at this place now where you can give your take on the biggest owl news maybe of all time because it's wraps. It's actually done. And I wanted to pull up the article just to, this is on Esports GG, just give the key takeaways for context, which is that the Owl teams face offseason vote to decide on a new agreement. The teams may also take a $6 million termination fee. The Activision financial report paints a picture of an unprofitable league. Wow, that's a shock. That one is, I mean, league remains committed to competitive ecosystem. I'm not sure what that key.
Yeah,
do you know that?
I mean, what I would imagine that means is that even though the Overwatch League may not exist, they would probably return back to, like, an open circuit system where there are still tournaments being run and prize pools being hosted, but not, at that point it's like a free for all. It's like open qualifiers, and you're getting that, like, more grassroots feel instead of everybody being tied into a league structure and paying for their spot. And yeah, it's kind of wild that the league is looking to pay them back $6 million out of what they originally paid. I mean, for some teams, they still owe about $6 million in franchise fee payments because you don't, like, pay the 10, 20 mil up front. You don't just deposit the cash into the Activision bank account. You pay over time, and they deferred the payments and allowed them the ability to defer because of COVID. They also had a thing earlier with the Toronto Defiant where they were leading a legal battle against the league to try and get compensated based on those expectations at the start not being fulfilled. And the report was that I believe that the Toronto Defiant had, like, cancelled out their what they owed to the league. So I don't know whether they are, like, getting $6 million cash on top of that, or whether that was what they've agreed, and now this is just, like, a different way of phrasing that. But yeah, without the details, it seems like a lot of it is just going to be like, you already owed us $6 million extra in franchise fees, so we're just going to cancel those debts.
Just waive those.
I think a lot of it is going to end up being that, and essentially people just split.
Do you feel are you feeling melancholy about the situation, given you committed so much time to the league?
No, I've moved on completely.
Really?
Yeah.
You've just met, the league is dead. How long were you in it?
4 years. 18, 19, 20, 21. Yeah.
This guy's just stoic and ruthless.
I mean, if my primary school got knocked down, I wouldn't be bothered about that either.
Yeah, but I mean that's a terrible example.
Well, I mean,
I wouldn't give a shit if my school was torn down either. But that's like I don't know. I mean, that's actually not like Plat Chat.
I don't feel like I don't feel like I worked on the product and like I don't feel like I made the Overwatch League significantly different. I worked on it. I didn't make it. Like, it's not like Plat Chat where I feel like we've made that, we've like built it up. Yeah, if I moved on, went to something else, and it died, like if Plat Chat Overwatch dies, then I'll feel more bad than if the Overwatch League dies.
Yeah, that's fair. So you really just see it as it was a job.
Yeah, it was a job. Done with work, clock in, clock out.
Clock in and clock out.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't at the time. I put in a lot of effort and loved it and was really trying to push it as far as it could. But that's what I do with my job. Like, that is what my job means to me, is committing massive amounts of time and effort. And then when I move on, I've moved on.
Does this, in your opinion, have wider implications for the esports scene as a whole?
Not necessarily. I don't think so. I mean, at the moment, there's a bit of a sponsorship drought, like an advertising drought. But I don't think that's been caused. One of the big problems that people were theorizing about the Overwatch League is that it would burn a lot of people. So big investors and sponsors would get burnt by their involvement in a, like a product that was promising too much and delivering too little. But I personally haven't really seen that. I mean, a lot of the sponsors that were involved in the Overwatch League were not really like being asked for vast sums of money from what I'm aware of. They had some sponsors that were barely paying anything for massive spots. And it was more to do with the brands being tied together that was like positively beneficial for both parties. What Activision Blizzard did in terms of having discriminatory practices towards women in the workplace and harassing people has done far more damage than anything that the Overwatch League could have done in terms of that. Now, having said that, I have heard from other people behind the scenes that at the moment, talking to any advertisers with esports prospects is like a dirty word. But I don't think that's necessarily just because of Overwatch League. I think that's because of a lot of bad practices, mostly from, I mean, maybe this is me being ignorant talking about this, but from what I can tell, it seems like a lot of it has come from the organization side. Like orgs making large sponsorship deals and then not being able to deliver on it because they haven't built out their content teams properly, or they don't have good agreements in place with their pro players who are content creators to deliver on what they've promised. And I think that has burnt a lot of advertisers in the space. I guess we'll see the next time a large project comes around like this, whether some of the people that originally invested in the Overwatch League are ever interested in returning back to esports things. The way that the franchise models are looking in the future, or partnership models, looks like, I mean, the developers are going to be giving money to the teams more so. I mean, the Riot model is not in any way the same as what the Overwatch League asked for. The Overwatch League was asking for like 10 to 20 million in payments, and they would give a fairly small revenue share. Riot is giving the teams quite a lot of money to operate and just asking that they pay the salaries so that the league can function, basically.
Yeah. Taking it back to a few questions, I guess, just about broadcasting before we wrap up. Are there people that you look towards for inspiration on how you've formed your career and the voice that you have?
Yeah. Yes, but not specifics. For example, I think that, I consume a lot of esports broadcast content, a lot of the Counter-Strike stuff, a lot of the, other Overwatch League people, and like some of the, bits and bobs from all over the place. But what I'm trying to listen for is what specifically makes that compelling. Like, I realize I have an emotion when I listen to this. What is it about that I find compelling? And how do I take that concept and apply it? Not necessarily the same thing, but like, for example, working in the Overwatch League, Puckett was a massive inspiration in terms of how the desk operated, being able to have his like structured approach to setting up segments and storytelling was extremely useful there. With regards to live commentary, like the way that Semler uses pitch really, really well in order to deliver excitement is something that I was inspired by, though haven't really implemented myself. I don't have that level of pitch control to be able to properly do that, I don't think. And the way that some of the color commentators like Henry G add showmanship into their color commentary was something that I thought he did spectacularly, that I wanted to try to have little pieces of. Within Valorant, Sean Gares was a massive inspiration in terms of how he was reading the game, to be able to pick up on what he was picking up on during the live matches. Like that kind of set the bar for like, do you know what's happening? Like if you can pick that kind of stuff out, okay, you've got a decent idea of what's occurring during the match. Yeah, some of the people that I've picked things from.
So given you take so much inspiration from other people in the scene and are mostly focused on consuming other esports content and working on multiple big productions, small productions, doing it yourself, what do you think are the things you would most want to change about the way that esports productions are ran right now?
Most want to change. I think the biggest I feel like one of the big things is that people tend to get very stuck in the status quo of like, this is how it's done. So for example, one of the things I really like doing is when some new concept comes around, like finding out what works there and hammering it. Like for the co-streaming wave that kicked off, I was quite early on that wave because I realized how new it was and like what different experience it was bringing to the broadcast. And I think that that's something that while Riot has implemented it to the sense of like allowing co-streaming, they haven't actually taken anything that people like about co-streaming and added it to the broadcast. There is no element of that connection with the fan or the casual, like, you know, the Ludwig Tarek event where we were sitting around like chilling, watching the game. There's none of that in the current broadcast setup. It's still quite, even when we try and make it loose, we're still, you know, all stood at a desk or we're all sat in a very like, you know, set systems or stood in front of a wall or whatever. But that I think is one of the big things, is like having the boldness to just break down conventional ideas of, we're going to an analyst desk that's going to tell us about the game. Like, why don't we just go and do something completely different? Like, as long as you're telling the stories that need to be told, you can add a lot of other flavor in there. Like, for example, the people that are consuming the Valorant content currently, in between watching the game, they might have us on mute and be watching Tarek play GeoGuessr or the Password game or something or whatever. Like, we can do stupider shit than we're currently doing, but we're still trying to make it feel like a sports broadcast. So I think just being more experimental would be the primary thing. Like focusing on what the viewers are actually wanting. Like, we have a very young audience that is what they want and what sports broadcasts are doing are very, very different. So I think just keeping up with the times by experimenting with different things is the main thing that I would shift.
Do you like the general idea of the desk should be more like Plat Chat? Because I think that's something that
Plat Chat's 3 hours long.
Right. I mean, that's not it's not literally possible.
Yeah.
But it's the vibe.
Yeah.
I suppose.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but Plat Chat is also like the podcast that we do. If we were going to talk about a team, is just us, like it's chatting about stuff in a way that you would with friends or you would on a co-stream. It's a very relaxed setting. We're not focusing on telling the stories because we're already like assuming that gets done elsewhere. So I think that's one of the issues with the trying to make the desk like that, is then who tells the big picture narrative? You know, who makes sure that the basics are covered there? That's kind of what that's what the co-streaming is so good at in its current sense, where it's separate to the show, is that you have all of the like commentary and the desk narratives and all of the like basics for the sandwich, and then the co-streamer can add any kind of shit on top that they want. But they're never gonna mess up or take time away from the basics. If the viewer wants the basics, they can always go and get the basics. So that's something that's valuable with the way that it's currently operating.
Why do you think Plat Chat took off, in your opinion, for Valorant, Overwatch, either or?
I think the Valorant one was like us using the same formula in a more popular game. I think the show took off because we have the ability to talk shit to each other without getting bothered by it. I think it's the same thing that we were talking about earlier about like being rude to each other without it mattering. Like, I know while we were out for drinks last night, and I think, was it Kurt or was it you saying people want to make let's make a new Plat Chat. Let's just find people who've been friends for 10 years and put them together where they have expert knowledge of a game and also have been friends for 10 years. That'll be easy. like that. Why has it worked? Because there's good chemistry between the people involved that isn't having to be like cooked up. That's why it's so valuable to find people like Bala, like Mimi, like TMV or whatever. Like the guests that gel really well with the current cast are excellent, like gold dust, because it's not you don't have the time to sit down and like workshop it all. You know, you don't want to sit there and be like, dude, like, can you get more involved or something? Like, let's do a VOD review of the last Plat Chat. I think there's some chemistry missing.
Lord. Like, yeah, I could not imagine ever doing a VOD review of Plat Chat. One of the things with it, actually, how much do you think Plat Chat has helped your and our careers? Because it's always been this weird dichotomy of massive impact, yet no ability for any of us to even have like a part-time financial job, like seeing it as even a part-time job. It's never even generated that.
No, it doesn't generate money.
Yeah, I mean, it is just
it's just brand awareness, really, isn't it? At the end of the day, but it's like it's good, it's valuable, it's useful. I think that if I had not been doing that podcast, if I'd just been doing my own YouTube stuff, I think I probably would have still got into commentary, but I don't think that I would be as, known, or the people would care as much about what I had to say. But yeah, it's been helpful. Yeah, I think one of the other reasons that it does well too is because it's evident that we put the time into actually going through stuff and like looking at stuff. We obviously can't watch everything. The game has just gotten too large now. But when we're talking about something, we've at least tried to do the work to discuss it in a sensible manner without just being we don't just recount the scores. We're telling you like what happened in the game and like what we think went wrong or went right or something like that. It's more detailed than just this is what happened.
Yeah, I didn't realize how much more difficult it would be, to keep track of everything while doing the broadcast now. I mean,
it's way more difficult.
The traveling and the days that we're working, because it's the same days that the other matches are happening.
It's crazy.
And being on the desk, it's like 10 hours minimum.
Yeah.
It's just watching all the games from the other regions is just...
It's way easier to... It's so strange being broadcast talent. You can know more about the game by being sat at home watching all the games, not having a job, than you can by working on the broadcast or working with a team. Like if you're a coach, you know your team really well. You talk to the coaches, they don't know dick about the other teams.
Unless
they've done like specific VOD review about them, because they have a match coming up. generally, they couldn't even tell you what comp they played most recently. They don't know what defaults they're running or what strats they're running or anything. Like, they're so focused on their own play because that's their job. And that's kind of similar for us, right? We're like, we end up being hyper-focused on Americas while we're here because we're working on it, and you don't have as much time to watch the other stuff, and it just takes enormous amounts of effort to be as broad as we want to be. Yeah, it's tough.
Would you want to essentially do these broadcasts and big productions for as long as you absolutely can, or would you have any desire to move into independent content? Because I know you've spoken before, at least like mentioned in passing, that it's like you just love like what Ludwig does, for instance, putting on larger scale shows, large scale events, stuff like that.
Yeah, that would be fabulous. But also, I need to break a sub record in order to have the money to do that kind of stuff. So I don't think that's likely. That would be fantastic if we ever got to that point, but it doesn't seem likely. I probably should have gone into content creation full time like 4 years ago, and then just abandoned commentary. And I think I'd be bigger than I am now.
Really?
Yeah, definitely.
Like, if you left when you were, would that be around the time you started? I mean, you really were one of the first co-streamers. It was happening a bit in Fortnite at the same time.
Yeah.
And it was just taking off there.
I had like 4 5K concurrents while I was doing Overwatch.
Really?
Co-streaming towards the end, yeah. I started off, I had like 250. It got bigger and bigger and bigger. I had like 2K, 4K. And then right as I left, I had like 4.5K. Like, that was what I was averaging at the end. And then, again, like doing the Karmine Corp stuff, I had like 6K, crazy. 10K. Like, I think if I just threw myself into doing content creation, I would be larger than I am now if I had gone fully into it. But I enjoy doing commentary. I'm not in it to try and be as large as possible. I just enjoy doing the commentary side of it. But hopefully when that stops being enjoyable, I'll still have the opportunity to do content. Because it's not like you can just decide, like, okay, people, come and watch me now. You have to take advantage of the opportunities when they present themselves. I just hope that opportunity is still there whenever I stop being interested in, or events conspire to stop me from doing this kind of stuff. Like, I have a family and can't travel for it, or like they don't want to pay for me to fly out to Americas, or whatever could happen. If those situations occur, hopefully that is still an option for me to do that. But then I have other options too. Like, I'd be super down to work behind the scenes and do like a production job. I'd love to be a producer on one of these shows. I feel like I could fucking nail that. And then recently I've been itching to do some coaching. I have been absolutely itching to do some like assistant coaching, because I'm watching all of these teams fucking up the basics. They just don't even understand. Like, they have basic protocols that they are beefing. And like, I think they just don't. I think there's a lot of teams out there, because of the massive amounts of roster moves that happen because of the partnership system, that have just gone back to square one, and they have good players, but they don't understand what they should be doing on their approach to games. I mean, I'm watching Sen like run around like headless chicken for Sentinels, and the entire team structure was just ruined. Like, there's just something about being on the inside that causes blinker vision, and you lose all concept of reality. So I don't think that'll be realistic, though. I don't think I'll actually do that, because it's a thankless task. What I mean is, though, I'm itching to do it because it would just be something new, interesting, and fun.
Right. Do you think you would have it in you? Because one of the troubles with esports is the games are on such a short life cycle compared to, obviously sport. Yeah. Like football isn't really going anywhere at this point, right? Yeah. But the esports life cycle compared to those, look at Overwatch. Was it 5 years, 6 years, and it's taken a massive downturn? Yeah. Plenty of games, just, a lot of the tier 2 games especially. Look at Battle Royales. They were the hottest games, period, genre for years. Yeah. They've all, like, Fortnite still has a good amount of players, but it's not like it was. Yeah. PUBG, H1Z1, all those games just competitively, see ya. And you kind of have to be on the cutting edge of new games. But basically how you were in VALORANT. You saw the opportunity, you took it. Like, if even down the line, could you see yourself trying to jump into a new game in 4 years?
Yeah, definitely.
5 years? Oh, really? You'd just be ready to do it?
Yeah, as long as As long as it's a game that I'm interested in, I'm willing to commit the same amount of time in. I did it for Overwatch, did it for Valorant. Like, I can do it again. Yeah. All it takes is time. You just have to be willing to sit there and watch ungodly amounts of footage and sit down and think about, why are they doing this? What is happening here? How do I explain this? Like, do I actually know what's going on? You know what I mean? Like, why is everything happening? Like, when I first started watching Valorant, I was like, okay, why are they using that piece of utility? And what's annoying is sometimes they don't know why they're doing it, and they're making mistakes, and that is difficult to then learn from, because you have to try and parse that out from the actual stuff. But you know, at the very beginning, people were like, the minds were getting blown because people were using Sova drones to push opposites off angles. Like, that was actually a mind-blowing development in the meta, and being able to sit down and think critically about, like, okay, what is this? What is this concept? What else could you apply to this? Is it's a replicable. It's just a lot of effort.
Yeah, 100%. All right. I have a few rapid fire questions. Okay. And then it's wraps.
Yeah.
So, first off, did you ever learn how to swim properly, or do you still immediately throw up in the pool?
I'm not a very good swimmer, but I have swum.
Okay. In your adult life?
Yeah. I mean, I go paddleboarding and I have occasionally surfed and stuff. So
that's true. Yeah. So you're not.
I'm not going to drown if you throw me in a pool.
And you're not going to.
I'm not going to throw up. I mean, I might throw up.
You move past that phase.
Yeah. I don't really understand what that was, but yeah, I was not like a water animal as a child.
Second, did you ever get your laptop? It was like your power supply back.
Yes.
From that, you actually did?
The power, back from, no, I didn't.
In Austin, they just stole your laptop, repair place.
Yeah. And I just bought a new one. It was like $120. It was crazy.
Yep. And third and finally, what is the most disgusting food item you've ever eaten in your life?
Bull dick. Bull's penis. That was revolting.
Yep, and there it is. All right, and that's the end of it. So thank you, Josh. And,
thank you.
Yeah, Oscar, you can wrap it up there with that shocked face to the last question. Much appreciated.
It smelled, when I cooked it, like penis and dog food mixed together. It was so bad.
Lord. Yeah, that was an iconic moment. A truly iconic moment, that one.
Yeah.